Chapter 2019. In fact, I think it's possible to refine the saint's blood from this bone. If that's the case, it'll be the best. The saint's blood is unimaginable. It's extremely beneficial to refine a cultivator's body. It can even be used as a source of energy for Black Earth. Even though it's just a small hand bone, it's full of treasures. Alright, then I'll have to trouble you. This matter will be left to Black Earth. Lin Xian can't help much now, so he can only use all his strength to drive the spirit vessel. Tai Dynasty, Valurium Palace. It was early in the morning and the sun had just risen. Thousands of rays of light shone on the mountains. At this moment, a gray light streaked across the sky like a sword light, shuttling through the mountains quickly. Then, it entered the depths of Valurium Palace. Your Highness, there's news. The gray sword in tent turned into a gray-robed man and said respectfully. Boom! The door of the palace slowly opened and King Valurium strode out. He wore a crown and a royal robe. His aura was like a dragon. Speak! A majestic voice sounded. The saint's relic in Jiuli Pagoda has been stolen. It's Prince Xian Yu of Great Xia Dynasty. It's really stolen? King Valurium asked again. It's indeed stolen. Now, the entire Jiuli Pagoda, including the people of Western Jiuli, are chasing after Xian Yu. Father, we've failed. At this moment, a purple-robed young man came from behind. He frowned and seemed unhappy. No. King Valurium smiled. How do you think an almighty can enter Jiuli Pagoda and steal the saint's relic? It's obviously impossible. Father, are you saying that you've never thought of getting the saint's relic? This thing is so precious. We must send a large number of elites to get it. Even a peerless almighty wouldn't be able to succeed with just a single person. So, we're sending people to disrupt the battle. Once the news of the nest of 10,000 dragons is out, the 9 nations will be stirred up. Tai Dynasty will definitely be caught in it. It's better to cause a war between the 2 nations now and deplete their strength. This way, we'll have an advantage when the battle for the nest of 10,000 dragons starts. In the past, those people failed because they didn't disrupt the war at all and couldn't cause the 2 countries to go to war. And now, that brat has succeeded. I believe that the relationship between the 9 Li dynasty and the Great Xia dynasty must be very tense. Who knows, the experts from both sides might even fight. At that time, some of them will definitely die. We just need to watch from the side. Moreover, the things of the saints are just legends. Don't take them seriously. Even if there is, it's a hot potato. We can't eat it now. Father is wise. Behind him, the purple-clad young man's face lit up when he heard this. Have you prepared the things for the 8th prince? Valurium waved his hand as he spoke. Immediately, the gray-robed man who was kneeling in front of him left the hall. The purple-clothed youth said, Don't worry, father. Everything is ready. Hearing this, Valurium nodded slightly, then said, We're already on the 8th prince's side. There's no turning back. If the 8th prince fails in the end, I'm afraid our Valurium palace will suffer a great blow. Don't worry, father. 8th brother has gathered many experts this time. He definitely has the strength to fight for the crown prince's position. Valurium nodded, then looked into the distance, his eyes incomparably deep. 10 days later, a figure arrived. This person was Lin Xian. He was travel-worn, but he had rushed over and used the super transportation formation to return to Valurium Palace. Taking a deep breath, Lin Xian strode into the depths of Valurium Palace. Stand! There were 2 guards at the door, holding spears in their hands, blocking the way. Lin Xian said in a low voice, My name is Lin Xian. I have a matter to discuss with the king. Please pass on my message. Wait. A guard went in to pass on the message. It didn't take long for him to return. He said respectfully, Lin Gongzi, please. Lin Xian nodded and followed the guard inside. In the distance, immortal mist drifted. A great hall was hidden in the clouds like an immortal's palace. By the time he reached the steps of the great hall, the guard had already retreated. Only Lin Xian remained. Stepping on the stone platform, He was surrounded by clouds. It was as if he was in an immortal's paradise. Creak. The vermilion doors opened, and Lin Xian entered the great hall. It was empty inside. There was only a stalwart figure standing at the front with his hands behind his back. "Greetings, Your Highness." Lin Xian cupped his fist slightly, then said, "The operation failed. I didn't get the box you wanted. Lin Gongzi has returned." Valurium turned around, a smile on his face. "I've heard about it. The whole world knows about it. The box was snatched away by the Great Xia dynasty. Not only the Great Xia dynasty, but also the people of Western Jiuli. They were well prepared. They brought a large number of experts to attack. It's normal that you didn't get it alone. So you're not to blame." Hearing this, Lin Xian frowned. He was surprised. Because this was not what he had expected. He thought that Valurium King would be depressed and angry. But now, it seemed that he wasn't. In fact, Valurium King seemed happy. This made Lin Xian very confused. "What about the other 2 missions?" he asked subconsciously. "The other 2 missions continue. You can enter the other 2 mountains. As long as you complete the mission," Valurium King said with a smile. "Although you didn't get the box I wanted this time, you were able to retreat safely from so many experts. This is enough to prove your strength. He can continue?" This made Lin Xian even more surprised. Could it be that Valurium King didn't want the saint's treasure at all? However, at this time, Valurium King spoke again. "Are you willing to accept the second mission?" "Yes." Lin Xian nodded. "I'd like to see what game Valurium King is playing. The mission is very simple. Kill someone." "Kill someone?" Lin Xian raised his eyebrows. It was indeed simple and crude. He asked, "Who do you want to kill?" "Sword King of Breeze by Zijing." Valurium King waved his sleeve and threw a jade slip to Lin Xian. Lin Xian reached out to take it. Valurium King said, "This jade slip contains information about Bai Zijing. It contains his cultivation, strength, and the characteristics of his cultivation method. Study it. Prepare to leave in 3 days." "Okay." Lin Xian nodded and left with the jade slip. After Lin Xian left, the young man in purple came out again. He asked, "Father, can he succeed this time?" Chapter 2020. Valurium King's eyes flickered. According to their strength, it's a 50-50 chance. However, this Bai Zijing is a sword expert that the first prince paid a great price to invite. His existence is a great threat to us. So, let this kid make a move. Even if he can't kill the other party, injuring such a powerful sword king will be of great benefit to us. Hearing this, the purple-clothed youth also smiled. In other words, Bai Zijing might not die, as long as that kid can win. The Tai dynasty had a vast territory. With a large territory, there were many natural people. With many people, there were many opportunities to produce geniuses. Therefore, the Tai dynasty could be said to be full of geniuses and experts. However, among the younger generation, there was one person who was very famous. He was a swordsman. To be precise, he was a sword king. His name was Bai Zijing. Although Bai Zijing only had the cultivation of a 6-star perfection, his combat strength was already comparable to a mighty figure. He could even fight a mighty figure. It was rumored that he had even killed one before. It was rumored that once his sword technique was used, no one could match it. Even the older generation had to retreat. And now, there was another crazy news that quickly spread throughout the Tai dynasty. That was, Bai Zijing was going to challenge various experts to break through. Have you heard? Bai Zijing has already gone south. I think he's going to challenge Sky Sword Elder. He wants to challenge Sky Sword Elder? He's crazy. If I remember correctly, Sky Sword Elder is a mighty figure. And Sky Sword Elder is also a swordsman. A mighty swordsman is definitely terrifying. This Bai Zijing actually dares to challenge him. What exactly is he relying on? I don't know. I think he wants to break through to the realm of a mighty figure. After all, he's already a 6-star perfection now. He's only one step away from the realm of a mighty figure. When he becomes a true mighty figure, his strength will definitely be even more terrifying. I'm afraid that even those mighty figures who have cultivated for hundreds or thousands of years are no match for him. Heavens, this guy is too terrifying. Do you think he'll succeed? I don't think so. Sky Sword Elder isn't someone to be trifled with. Moreover, he's been famous for almost 1,000 years. The entire Tai dynasty was talking about this matter everywhere. Because this matter was simply too shocking. However, they did not know that at this moment, in a barren mountain in the south, two figures were confronting each other. One of them was a young man in white. He carried a green sword on his back and stood in the air with a heroic bearing. The other person was an old man wearing a Taoist robe. His gaze was gloomy and his face was withered. However, his eyes were extremely sharp, like a peerless sword that pierced through the void. Little doll, are you sure you want to fight me? The elder with the sharp gaze was none other than Sky Sword Elder. I'm naturally here to fight you. Sky Sword Old Man, draw your sword. The young man in white robes said coldly. He was Bai Zijing, a very young sword king. If that's the case, then don't blame me. Old Man Tian slowly pulled out a red sword and coldly said, My bloodthirsty sword will not return to its scabbard without seeing blood. 1. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his sword and a red sword she shot out quickly. Like a river of blood, it shone in the air. Accompanying it was an extremely terrifying aura, as if a peerless beast had awakened in the air. Wind Slayer! Facing this terrifying sword, the young man in white, Bai Zijing, was very calm. He quickly unsheathed the green sword on his back and thrust it forward. Boom! Suddenly, the river of blood that filled the sky was cut in half, scattering countless blood flowers and surging in all directions. That sharp attack and murderous aura were also destroyed by a single sword strike. You can see through my flaws? Opposite him, Sky Sword Elder frowned. To be honest, although he had heard of the other party, in his opinion, the other party was not able to fight with him. He was an almighty, and the other party was only a 6-star king. Although he was also a swordsman, the gap between their realms could not be made up at all. However, he did not expect the other party to change his attitude after just one sword attack. Although it was just one sword attack, he had already realized that the other party's timing and the sharpness of the sword aura were not inferior to his. This made him extremely shocked. Interesting. Kid, I'll let you see my true strength. Sky Sword Elder snorted coldly, then attacked again. This sword pierced through the void, emitting a terrifying aura. It was like a divine red painting that pierced through the 9 heavens. This sword was too fast, so fast that it dazzled one's eyes. However, after attacking, Sky Sword Elder's pupils shrank. Because he realized that the other party's sword was even faster than his. But how was this possible? He had already displayed his best sword technique, the Heavenly Sword technique. Even an almighty could not dodge the terrifying sword light. However, the other party's sword light was even faster than his. This simply made him unable to believe it. Who exactly was this young man in front of him? He was actually so powerful. Damn it! Sky Sword Technique! Sky Sword Elder finally roared and fought with all his might. He realized that although the other party was a 6-star king, he was definitely not weaker than him. He had to fight with all his might. Therefore, he waved the red sword in his hand, and immediately 18 red sword lights were drawn in the sky. They formed a mysterious pattern in the sky. Once this sword pattern was formed, its terrifying aura kept rising. Its power was several times stronger than the previous sword light. Buzz! This sword pattern shrouded the front, wanting to suppress the white-clothed youth, Bai Zijing. Finally using your ultimate move? On the opposite side, Bai Zijing's lips curled up slightly, and there was a sharp light in his eyes. Gale's sword blade! Facing the terrifying red sword pattern, Bai Zijing did not dodge at all. Instead, he held the sword with both hands. Then, he attacked with the green sword in his hand. Boom! A hurricane blew in the sky. Then, a cyan sword light formed in the storm and slashed forward. The speed of this sword was extremely fast, and it was unusually fierce and powerful. Crack! In the next moment, a corner of the red sword pattern in the sky was cut open. Then, the green sword light instantly poured in like a storm. Oh no! Seeing this scene, Sky Sword Elder's face changed. Then, he blocked with his sword, forming a circular sword aura that condensed in front of him. Clang! That sword aura had just formed when the green sword aura slashed over. Then, it slammed into it. In the next moment, the sword light dimmed, and Sky Sword Elder was sent flying while vomiting blood. How is this possible? How is this possible? Sky Sword Elder flew out for thousands of meters before stabilizing his body. However, his eyes were filled with disbelief. Chapter 2021. Because this was too shocking, too unexpected. A young man was actually able to defeat him. Furthermore, it was in terms of sword Dao. This was something that he could not accept. Kid, I admit that I've underestimated you. However, it's impossible for you to defeat me like this. Next, I'll show you the true power of the Sky Sword technique. As he spoke, Old Man Sky Sword wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and held the red sword tightly. His entire body emitted a blood-red aura, and the surrounding sky was instantly dyed blood-red. He still wanted to fight? However, Bai Zijing, the young man in white, frowned. His opponent had already lost, but he still refused to stop. This made him a little angry. Therefore, he snorted at the next moment, and the aura on his body rose rapidly. Green sword edges circled around him, and in the wind, there were bolts of blue lightning that rose rapidly. You've already taken up too much of my time. Therefore, let's end this with a move of wind, Bai Zijing said indifferently. You're courting death. Old Man Sky Sword was furious. No one had ever dared to say such words to him. Therefore, he snorted at the next moment, and there was a sharp light in his eyes. Sky Sword's secret technique, Sky Killing! Old Man Sky Sword finally used his strongest move. Then, the sky changed color, and there was a sea of blood surging. The red sword light slashed out at the fastest speed. This sword was too fast, so fast that it was simply unbelievable. In the blink of an eye, the sharp sword light was already in front of him. It was just like traveling through time and space. Competing in speed with me? You're not good enough. At this moment, Bai Zijing was also extremely terrifying. The green sword in his hand also slashed out instantly. Whirlwind Wild Cloud! Although it was released later, the speed of this move increased sharply. In an instant, the red sword light in front of him was split into two. Not only that, the green sword light had already enveloped Old Man Sky Sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A gale swept out, and Old Man Sky Sword retreated again with blood dripping from his body. A strand of pale hair also fell from the sky. 16 moves. In an instant, 16 sword marks appeared on his body. There was even one that brushed past his heart. Lost. Sky Sword Elder was completely defeated. His body began to tremble, and the hand holding the sword became unstable. This was because his opponent's swordsmanship was simply too powerful. In an instant, these 16 sword scars could kill him 16 times. It was just that the other party hadn't made a move yet. You won. Old Man Heaven Sword said this softly, and instantly, he seemed to have aged several hundred years. Hearing this, Bai Zijing withdrew his green sword and said in a deep voice, I won't kill you, nor will I ask you to do anything else. You just need to seal your sword for 30 years and not make a move. He had his reasons for saying that. The reason he challenged all kinds of sword experts was because he wanted to surpass himself. Apart from that, there was another reason. It was to help the first prince clear the obstacles. Now in the Tai dynasty, all the princes were fighting openly and secretly, preparing to seize the position of crown prince. Among them, the first prince, the third prince, and the eighth prince were the strongest. And he, Bai Zijing, was the first prince's man. Therefore, those who could not be recruited by the first prince, Bai Zijing would not allow them to be recruited by the third prince and the eighth prince. Therefore, he thought of this method to make them not make a move for 30 years. All right. Hearing this, Old Man Heaven's Sword nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. Not making a move for 30 years was nothing to him. It was because he only needed to go into seclusion. For someone like him, it would take at least 30 to 50 years compared to an official. After getting Old Man Heaven's Sword's answer, Bai Zijing soared into the sky and left. Looking at Bai Zijing's back view, Old Man Heaven's Sword had a complicated expression. He did not expect this young man to be so powerful. He was afraid that the Tai dynasty would not be peaceful for the next few years. He sighed because the third prince had once looked for someone to invite him, but he had rejected him for the time being. The reason why Bai Zijing looked for him was probably because of the fight for the position of crown prince. Not making a move for 30 years was also a good thing for him. It was because he could avoid such a whirlpool of power struggle. Every time there was a fight between the princes, countless experts would die. There would be people who would lose their lives because they stood on the wrong side. Not long after, the news of Bai Zijing defeating Old Man Heaven's Sword swept through the Tai dynasty like a gust of wind. In an instant, all the martial artists in the Tai dynasty knew about it. Everyone was in an uproar as they discussed animatedly. Heavens, this Bai Zijing is too terrifying. He actually defeated Old Man Heaven's Sword? Isn't Old Man Heaven's Sword an almighty? Moreover, he's an expert in the sword Tao. How did he lose? Not only that, I also heard even more shocking news. It said that Old Man Heaven's Sword failed and is not allowed to make a move for 30 years. Discussions sounded one after another, all about Bai Zijing and Old Man Heaven's Sword. Ha ha! Great! In the palace of the Tai dynasty, a round-faced young man immediately bowed his head and laughed when he heard the news. He was wearing a yellow robe and was slightly plump. His eyes were smiling like a Maitreya Buddha. He was the crown prince of the Tai dynasty. Bai Zijing, I really didn't misjudge him. Yeah, I didn't expect this kid to be so powerful. Even Old Man Heaven's Sword is not his match. Someone laughed at the side. They were all experts recruited by the crown prince. I reckon the third prince is going crazy with anger. The third prince originally wanted to recruit Old Man Heaven's Sword, but he didn't expect us to beat him to it. Haha, the third prince will definitely go crazy with anger. I can already imagine the look on his face. The first prince laughed heartily. Then, a cold light bloomed in his long and narrow eyes. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. From now on, Bai Zijing will defeat all the sword Tao experts in the Tai dynasty. I will let everyone know that if they don't join me, no one else will be able to get them. In another palace, a tall and thin young man's face was gloomy and abnormally angry. Trash, a bunch of trash! The young man roared. He wore a crown on his head and a purple robe with golden flying dragons embroidered on his sleeves. He was the third prince. At this moment, he also received the news of Old Man Heaven's Sword's defeat and instantly went crazy with anger. Prince, I think this should be the crown prince's action to target us, someone said. The third prince snorted coldly. Nonsense, of course I know that. What you need to do now is to think about how to break this situation. After Bai Zijing defeated Old Man Heaven's Sword, he went south again to challenge other sword Tao experts. The crown prince is obviously determined. He doesn't want the other princes to get what he can't get. Chapter 2022. Humph. That Bai Zijing is too arrogant. Does he really think that he can challenge all the experts in the world? I guess it won't be long before he is defeated. Someone was unconvinced. However, another middle-aged scholar holding a folding fan said, Your Highness, I think we should send someone to assassinate him secretly. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to recruit any experts in the future. Oh, what is Mr. Situ's opinion? The third prince looked at the middle-aged man holding a feather fan and asked in a deep voice. The first prince's move is very clever. It can stop many experts. However, he has forgotten that by doing so, he will not only be facing us. Everyone will become his enemy. Although the first prince is powerful and is born of the empress, do you think he can contend against all the other princes? Speaking of this, the middle-aged man smiled and waved the feather fan in his hand. The others understood what he meant. The third prince was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, "Yes, that's right. Not only will I be angry, but the other princes will also be angry. Boss, you've really made a bad move this time." The third prince smiled. "Hurry up and join forces with the others to kill Bai Zijing. Oh right, especially Old Eighth. Old Eighth's strength is not weak. We must not let him hide his strength at this time." Orders were passed down one after another. Then, figures walked out of the palace. They went to contact the other princes and prepared to join forces against the first prince. Valurium Manor. At this moment, figures were moving around as news came in from the outside. They sorted out the information and presented it to the depths of the Valurium Manor. In the hall, King Valurium looked at the news in his hand with a solemn expression. The purple-clothed youth beside him also had a gloomy expression. "Father, the first prince and Bai Zijing are too arrogant. Do they really want to challenge all the experts in the world?" "You are wrong. He doesn't want to challenge all the experts in the world. He wants to challenge the experts who oppose the first prince." King Valurium raised his head and placed the jade slips on the table. He then said in a deep voice, "Since they have taken action, let's take action too. Men, call Lin Xian in." Valurium gave the order, and the guards at the door quickly left like ghosts. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Su Chen arrived at the hall and asked, "Your Highness, you were looking for me? You've already learned about Bai Zijing, right?" King Valurium asked. "Understood." Lin Xian nodded, while King Valurium said, "Very well, you can go now. The bottom line I'll give you is to defeat Bai Zijing and prevent him from taking action for 100 years. Then, the second mission will be considered a success." "Got it." Lin Xian nodded, then turned and left Valurium Manor. Looking at Lin Xian's departing figure, the corners of the Valurium King's lips curled up into a smile. "First Prince, Bai Zijing, have a taste of the surprise I've prepared for you." After Bai Zijing defeated Old Man Heaven's Sword, he consecutively defeated 2 Sword Dao experts. The 2 of them were older generation figures. They were powerful and had reached the level of almighties. Moreover, their attainments in the Sword Dao were extremely powerful. But even so, they were still defeated and forced not to take action for 30 years. These 2 pieces of news, coupled with the incident with Old Man Heaven's Sword, caused a stir among all the cultivators in the Tai dynasty. All the cultivators, especially the young ones, were as excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Because it was hard for them to imagine what level Bai Zijing had reached. And those older generation figures were even crazier. Because they had witnessed the rise of a genius. "The Golden Age is coming!" some of the older generation figures exclaimed. That's right, the Golden Age referred to the era of cultivation geniuses and monstrous geniuses. They would appear in the same era and compete with each other. On the difficult path of martial Tao, dazzling sparks would be created from the collision. And every battle for the position of Crown Prince was the main factor that promoted the Golden Age. Those peerless geniuses and shocking experts would come out one after another and choose a prince to work for. Because when the prince they chose became the Crown Prince, these people would also receive great benefits. They would receive the baptism of the Tai dynasty's dragon vein. This was not an ordinary dragon vein, but the dragon vein that had allowed the Tai dynasty to last for a long time. It spiraled for thousands of miles like a giant dragon, hidden under the ground. This kind of dragon vein baptism could be said to have heaven-defying benefits. This was also why those peerless geniuses and experts would participate in the battle for the position of Crown Prince. For a time, the entire Tai dynasty could be said to be gathering. And at this time, Bai Zijing even announced that he would set up an arena at Mount Nanhua to welcome the challenges of various experts and peerless geniuses. Moreover, the time was set to be August 15th, a month later. August 15th, Mount Hua Sword Tournament. This news instantly swept through the entire Tai dynasty. For a time, countless people were shocked. And those experts and young geniuses all set off for Mount Nanhua. The other cultivators were even more excited because this was definitely a once-in-a-thousand-years event. They would definitely not miss such a good thing. Therefore, these people quickly set off and headed over. The young geniuses snorted coldly and did not take it seriously. They felt that Bai Zijing was too arrogant. He actually dared to challenge the world with his own strength. They decided that they must climb Mount Hua and teach this arrogant guy a lesson. At the same time, under the joint efforts of the third prince and the other princes, the third prince and the other princes also sent their experts to challenge Bai Zijing. This time, they had to defeat Bai Zijing in front of everyone in the world. They wanted to ruthlessly slap the first prince's face in front of the world and let the world know that he was the most qualified person to become the crown prince. August 15th, Mount Hua Sword Tournament. Lin Xian naturally heard the news as well. Immediately, the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. This guy is really arrogant. Great, let's go and meet him. With that, he boarded the spirit boat and flew in the direction of Mount Nanhua. Time passed day by day, and August 15th was getting closer and closer. Countless cultivators had arrived near Mount Hua. The cities near Mount Hua were filled with a large number of cultivators, and there was no lack of mighty figures among them. In fact, there were even those hidden experts, young geniuses, and terrifying swordsmen. In short, those experts that could not be seen usually had all arrived at this moment. On the streets and alleys, everyone was talking about the Mount Hua Sword Tournament and Bai Zijing. Have you heard? During this period of time, Bai Zijing defeated another two sword experts. One is an elder, and the other is a young genius. This kid is too powerful. I'm afraid he's the number one swordsman in the past 1,000 years. Chapter 2023. Do you think he'll really defeat all the experts in the sword meet on Mount Hua in a few days? I don't dare to say anything about the older generation, but I don't think many people in the younger generation are his match. Yeah, judging from his strength, he's definitely at the level of a prince. But those princes won't come here to fight. So, the number of people who can resist him can be counted on one hand. Not necessarily. You're underestimating the Tai dynasty. Those that you mentioned are all in the open. There are also some hidden in the barren mountains and swamps. They're hermit experts. They don't usually appear. If one of them appears, it'll definitely shock the world. That's true. I remember that a few hundred years ago, there was a person who came from the mountains. He defeated half of the dynasty. Basically, no one in the younger generation is his match. Now that you mention it, I remember it too. Indeed, there was such a person in the historical records. He's too heaven-defying. There are very few people like him. Who knows if he'll come to the sword meet on Mount Hua? If such a person doesn't appear, Bai Zijing will really defeat the younger generation. A series of discussions could be heard. Obviously, everyone was worried about the upcoming sword meet on Mount Hua. In a city 30,000 miles away from the sword meet on Mount Hua, there was a huge super-teleportation formation. The formation shone, and then a young figure walked out of it. He was tall and wore a brocade robe. His face was fair, but there was a hint of evilness. After coming out of the teleportation formation, the evil-looking young man raised his head and looked at the towering Mount Hua in the distance. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. Bai Zijing, you dare to challenge the heroes of Mount Hua? You're overestimating yourself. I'm here this time. Just wait to be defeated in front of the world. The evil-looking young man sneered, then his figure turned illusory and disappeared into the void. Time passed quickly, and it was already the 10th of August. There were only 5 days left until the 15th of August. During this period, a large number of experts came to Mount Hua. Most of them were from the younger generation, and those young geniuses also arrived one after another. Among them, the third prince and the 8th prince were the leaders, as well as the other princes. They sent out their capable subordinates, and those young geniuses also rushed over, preparing to kill Bai Zijing. Many veteran almighties had come as well. All of their expressions were cold, and their auras were solemn. It was because Bai Zijing had not only defeated the younger generation, but he had also challenged a few great existences. Such behavior infuriated the veteran almighties. As for the rest, most of them were here to watch the show. This was because they wanted to see what level Bai Zijing had reached. Among them, there was a young man who was valiant and heroic. He stood with his hands behind his back, floating in the void. A large number of young martial artists gathered around him. His name was Li Mengbai, and he was a very famous genius among the younger generation. He was a subordinate of the 8th prince. Brotherly, you've interacted with that Bai Zijing before. How is he? Is he as strong as the legends say? A warrior beside him asked. However, Li Mengbai said in a deep voice. He is indeed very strong. The rumors should be true. What? Hearing this, the expressions of the surrounding martial artists changed, and they all became extremely solemn. That was because they all knew of Li Mengbai. Furthermore, Li Mengbai was also a top-notch genius. They believed that Li Mengbai would definitely not exaggerate and praise her opponent. Since he said so, that Bai Zijing must be terrifyingly strong. Originally, they thought that the rumors were exaggerated and could not be trusted. But from the looks of it now, that might not be the case. On the other side, on a lone peak, a man in a green robe stood on the peak. His robes fluttered in the wind, and his entire body emitted an extremely sharp aura. Gale Sword Hero, Bai Zijing? Let me see if your Gale Sword technique is stronger or if my Dian Sword technique is stronger. The corners of the green-robed man's mouth curled up into a smile. If anyone heard this, they would definitely be extremely shocked. That was because the Dian Sword technique was very famous and came from the Dian Sacred Land. The Dian Sacred Land was a sacred land in middle ground. Its strength was extremely terrifying and mysterious. It was definitely an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the dynasty. Unexpectedly, the Dian's sacred land also sent someone. For the past few days, Lin Xian had been riding on a spirit boat and flying quickly towards Mount Hua. However, there was still a distance. He was not in a hurry. Instead, he cultivated silently to maintain his peak state. That was because he knew that since the other party wanted to challenge the world's experts, he would not leave after challenging just 1 or 2 people. He had plenty of time and opportunities. The days passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was August 15th. On this day, everyone was excited as they climbed up Mount Hua, which was tens of thousands of feet tall. Since ancient times, there had been a path on Mount Hua, which meant that Mount Hua was extremely dangerous. It was like a natural chasm. However, it was not a problem for these King Almighties. They all soared into the sky like lightning and arrived at Mount Hua. At this moment, there were already a few figures standing at the peak of Mount Hua. The person in the lead was a young man in white. He was like a peerless divine sword as he stood there quietly, emitting a sharp aura. On his back, he carried a green sword. He was Bai Zijing. This time, he did not come alone. There were still a few martial artists standing behind him. These people were sent by the first prince to prevent Bai Zijing from being beaten up by the crowd. Among them, a man and a woman stood very close to each other. They looked like Bai Zijing's lackeys. Oh my, there are quite a few experts this time. The man in blue looked around and immediately narrowed his eyes. The woman in red beside him snorted softly. It was useless no matter how many people came. No one was a match for Bai Zijing. Unless a peerless almighty made a move. The auras of these 2 people were also abnormally sharp. They were also prodigies of the younger generation. Bai Zijing, the youngest Sword King? You're too arrogant. Kid, let me break your legend. At this moment, a young man walked out with large strides. This young man was dressed in black and had a thin face. However, the aura on his body was extremely violent. There was a purple long sword at his waist. The sword was half a meter long and 3 fingers wide. There was no scabbard. One could see that there were incomparably simple sword patterns engraved on the sword. Who is this person? How dare he be the first to step forward? Don't you know him? He's the purple lightning sword, Liao Tian. What? He's Laotian, the legendary sword genius? It's said that his sword technique is extremely terrifying and comes from the nine heavens' divine thunder. This is too exciting. I didn't expect the famous Laotian to be the first to step up. This battle will definitely be exciting. Chapter 2024. Everyone was excited. They didn't expect to see such an exciting battle as soon as they arrived at Mount Hua. Kid, did you hear that? Quickly draw your sword and let me defeat you, Laotian said coldly. On the other hand, Bai Zijing was calm. He glanced at Laotian, then retracted his gaze and said indifferently, No need, you're not my match. What? Hearing that, everyone was in an uproar. Sounds of discussion rang out like muffled thunder, spreading in the surroundings. Too many people came to the sword meet on Mount Hua this time. At a glance, there were more than 1 million people. Apart from the front, where there was enough space, the other places, including the sky, the distant mountains, the ancient trees, and the mountain streams, were all packed with martial artists. However, so many people were stunned when they heard that. What did he say? He's not my match? He's actually looking down on Laotian. This kid is too arrogant. As far as I know, Laotian is powerful and famous. He's not weaker than Bai Zijing at all. In front, Laotian's face turned gloomy when he heard that. His gaze was gloomy, and his narrow eyes emitted a cold light. Good. I've always been the arrogant one. I didn't expect to meet someone who's even more arrogant than me today. However, kid, you'll pay the price for your arrogance. As he said that, Laotian took out the purple sword at his waist and stabbed it out. Boom! At the same time, purple lightning descended from the sky, forming a terrifying sea of lightning. Everyone felt their scalps go numb, and their hearts skip a beat. That was because the power of lightning formed by the sword strike was simply too terrifying. However, Bai Zijing didn't make a move at all. He still stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, This person isn't worthy of my attack. Beichin, I'll leave him to you. All right. I'll play with him. At that moment, the blue-robed man behind Bai Zijing laughed. Then, he took a step forward and a blue long sword appeared in his hand. The long sword was very strange. It was 1 meter long and there were 7 stars on it. They were like real stars that had shrunk countless times and were embedded on the long sword. Buzz! He swung the sword, and everyone's vision blurred. Then, starlight shone in the sky as if stars had descended, blocking the terrifying lightning. What? He actually blocked it. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Laotian was extremely terrifying. He was one of the top sword Dao geniuses of the younger generation. Who was this blue-clothed man? How could he block Laotian's attack so easily? Everyone was stunned. That was because they had never expected such a scene to occur. Laotian's expression also changed. He also did not expect that his opponent would be able to block his sword. However, he quickly snorted coldly. So what if he blocked the sword? His strength wasn't limited to this. As expected, in the next moment, Laotian's swordsmanship changed again. Along with his purple sword, 3 purple flood dragons appeared around him. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws as they flew towards the man in blue. A terrifying killing intent pierced through the 9 heavens. The berserk lightning caused the surrounding cultivators to continuously retreat. Big Dipper dusk. However, in the face of such a terrifying attack, the blue-clothed man remained calm. He waved the blue longsword, and the 7 stars on it glowed together, forming a starlight screen in front of him. Clang! 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 The purple longsword collided with the Big Dipper star screen along with the 3 lightning flood dragons. Cracks even appeared in the surrounding void, and they quickly spread all over the place. However, the Big Dipper star screen was abnormally strong. It did not shatter under such a fierce attack. Laotian, is this your purple lightning sword technique? If that's all you've got, then it's over. The blue-clothed young man, Beichin, said coldly. You want to attack my elder brother Bai Zijing? You're overestimating yourself. Humph. You're the one who's overestimating yourself. Liao Tian snorted coldly. How dare you go against me? This time, I'll let you know how powerful I am. In the next moment, he roared, and the light in his body shone even brighter. Streaks of sword chi surged out from the longsword, turning into bolts of lightning and forming a terrifying sea of lightning. The purple sea of lightning lit up the entire sky. In an instant, a terrifying energy pierced through the void. Purple lightning sword technique, destroy. The purple lightning that filled the sky formed streaks of terrifying purple sword shadows that slashed forward. One purple sword shadow after another, a total of 6, circled around each other in the air, forming a purple sword curtain, and quickly chopped down with great force. Liao Tian finally used the purple lightning sword technique. It seemed that he was really angry. Once the purple lightning sword technique was used, even a mighty figure would have to go all out to deal with it. That blue-clothed young man probably would not be able to withstand it at all. Indeed, Bai Zijing was too arrogant. He didn't make a move himself but got his subordinate to do it. Just watch, I'll definitely lose this time. Big Dipper illusory destruction. At this moment, the blue-clothed young man, Bai Chen, also snorted coldly. His gaze became abnormally sharp, and stars flickered in his eyes. The Big Dipper sword also released a terrifying radiance. On the sword, the Big Dipper shone, forming a gorgeous sword light. Then, he slashed down with the sword. Boom! 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 Accompanied by this terrifying sword shadow, a strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. 7 huge star shadows appeared, connecting to form the Big Dipper. Thousands of streaks of starlight descended. These powers were all poured into that sword shadow. Immediately, the sword shadow's power skyrocketed. What kind of sword technique is this? It's too terrifying. The surrounding cultivators were shocked, and they felt a chill run down their spines. That was because this murderous intent was too terrifying and sharp. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the two collided. Then, the 6 huge purple sword shadows in the sky were instantly blasted into pieces. Meanwhile, the Big Dipper sword light pierced through the purple lightning that filled the sky and slashed heavily on Liao Tian. Pfft! Liao Tian vomited blood and flew out. What? Liao Tian was defeated. When everyone saw this scene, their eyes widened, and their eyeballs almost fell out. Because this was simply too unbelievable. If Bai Zijing had made a move and defeated Liao Tian, they might still be able to accept it. But now, Bai Zijing had not made a move at all. Just the blue-clothed young man beside him had defeated Liao Tian in such a domineering manner. This made them feel as if they had gone crazy. In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. However, in the crowd, those peerless prodigies and seniors frowned. That was because they discovered that the blue-clothed young man's victory was not luck at all, but strength. His strength was indeed above Liao Tian's. Who is this blue-clothed young man? He's so powerful. Regardless of whether it was speed, strength, or attainments in sword techniques, he was above Liao Tian. Damn it! When did such a powerful helper appear beside Bai Zijing? Chapter 2025. Damn it! How is this possible? When did such a powerful helper appear by Bai Zijing's side? The first prince, they are definitely the first prince's people. This first prince is too terrifying. Where did he find so many young experts? Their strength is probably not much weaker than Bai Zijing's. There is still a woman in red beside him who has not made a move. Could it be that this woman in red is also an incomparably terrifying top genius? Discussions sounded one after another. Clearly, this scene was completely out of their expectations. Liao Tian was already a very powerful young genius, but in front of Bai Zijing, he did not even have the strength to make him make a move. Thinking of this, everyone's scalps went numb. Looking at the current situation, if the weak stood out, Bai Zijing would not make a move at all. The 2 people beside him would be able to deal with them. In other words, if they wanted Bai Zijing to make a move, they had to first defeat the man in blue and the woman in red beside him. This also prevented everyone from using the will tactic on Bai Zijing to exhaust his strength to a certain extent. I'll fight you. At this moment, another loud and clear voice rang out. Then, everyone turned their heads, and a million gazes were all fixed on a figure. It was a tall young man, more than 2 meters tall, his entire body bronze. He was like an iron tower, giving people a heavy feeling. Sure enough, when he walked, the mountains below trembled. Who is this person? Ah, what terrifying strength! I reckon that he can crush this mountain range with one step. It's him. Berserk Sword, Chong Lu. What? It's actually him. Hearing this, the surrounding cultivators were all extremely shocked. However, soon, someone frowned. Although Berserk Sword Chong Lu was also powerful, he was still a little inferior to Purple Lightning Sword Laotian. Even Laotian was no match for him, but Berserk Sword Chong Lu dared to come out. To be honest, they were indeed puzzled. However, at this moment, a young genius spoke in a deep voice. It's not like that. Berserk Sword Chong Lu is not as simple as you think. Indeed, Laotian looked more powerful, but that was reflected in his speed and sword technique. Chong Lu's specialty was in his strength and defense. From the previous battle, it could be seen that the blue-clothed youth surpassed Laotian in both speed and sword technique. Unless there was a genius far stronger than Laotian, only then could he defeat the blue-clothed youth. Otherwise, they could only attack from other places. For example, this Berserk Sword Chong Lu, his defensive power was amazing. Therefore, no matter how fast the other party was and how skillful his swordsmanship was, if he couldn't break through his defense, it would be futile. Furthermore, since he was known as the Berserk Sword, his swordsmanship and strength must be incomparably terrifying. He might not have been able to match up to the other party in terms of speed, but in terms of strength, he was definitely able to crush the other party. So that's how it was. Hearing this young genius's explanation, the surrounding crowd understood. Thus, they looked forward with great anticipation. The man in blue, Bei-chin, looked at the towering figure in front of him and smiled. The aura on your body is even weaker than Laotian's from before. It seems like your strength is inferior to his. Even he is no match for me. Do you think you can defeat me? Whether I can defeat him or not, we'll know after we fight. Wild Sword Demon Lord coldly snorted and stomped his foot. Suddenly, the mountains below trembled. At the sight of this scene, Bai Zijing let out a soft cry of surprise. Then, he looked toward the man who was like a metal tower. Suddenly, he said, Bei-chin, be careful. This guy has a thick earth constitution. What? Thick earth constitution? Hearing this, the man in blue, Bei-chin, was also surprised. Then, he narrowed his eyes. You have the thick earth constitution, which is known to have super strong defense? No wonder. No wonder you dare to come out and fight against me. Come on, show me your thick earth constitution. Let me see if it's as strong and unbreakable as the legends say. You'll see. Wild Sword Demon Lord snorted coldly. In the next moment, a layer of earthy yellow light appeared on his body as if he was wearing a layer of earth armor. Lines of rock-like patterns appeared on its surface. Not only that, he also pulled out a huge black sword from his storage ring. The sword was very heavy, like a door plank. When he waved it gently, the pressure caused cracks to appear in the void. However, such a heavy sword was like straw in Demon Lord's hand. It was abnormally agile. Boom! In the next moment, Demon Lord held the huge sword and slashed out. In the sky, a rumbling sound rang out. This sword brought with it a terrifying force of wind and thunder. In fact, black cracks appeared in the sky. Large cracks appeared in the mountain range below. Countless mountain peaks collapsed, unable to withstand the force of all this. Big Dipper Curtain! Feeling the terrifying power contained in this sword, the man in blue, Bei-chen's pupils constricted. In the next moment, he waved the Big Dipper sword in his hand and quickly formed a curtain of stars. In the sky, 7 huge star illusions formed a curtain of light, blocking in front of him. Boom! Boom! The sound of a violent collision rang out, and a thunderous sound resounded in the sky. Everyone retreated frantically, afraid that they would be affected by this energy. However, What was shocking was that such a violent sword did not shatter the blue Big Dipper curtain. The Big Dipper curtain looked very thin, like a piece of paper, but its sturdiness was beyond everyone's imagination. Bai Zijing was still very calm, and the woman in red beside him also smiled disdainfully. It's useless. The Big Dipper curtain is very terrifying. Even a mighty figure can't break it, let alone that demon lord. Next, it's my turn to attack. The man in blue, Bei Qin, sneered. He tapped his sword lightly, and light appeared in the sky, turning into a huge star that quickly smashed out. Boom! This sword was too fast, like a flying meteor. In an instant, it arrived in front of Demon Lord. Moreover, the blue starry sword light ruthlessly slashed on Demon Lord's body, making a terrifying sound. Cracks appeared in the void, and the surrounding people retreated again, their faces palpitating. However, Demon Lord did not dodge at all. Lines of rock-like runes appeared on his body, completely forming an armor of the earth. He had actually managed to block the sword forcefully. He blocked it? He really blocked it? How is this possible? Heavens, I'm not dreaming, am I? This Demon Lord is too terrifying. His defense is so amazing. Even Lei Yaotian, who had been defeated earlier, was shocked. Because he knew the strength of the man in blue, Bei Qin. Even he did not dare to take that sword light head-on. However, Demon Lord blocked it without any damage. His defense was heaven-defying. Even the man in blue, Bei Qin, revealed a trace of surprise. His expression became serious. As expected of the thick earth physique. It is indeed incomparably powerful. It can even block my attack. Chapter 2026. Berserk Sword Breaks the Wolf. At that moment, Chong Lu suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with his giant black sword. He used a killer move. The terrifying giant black sword transformed into a black gale that swept out in an instant. Boom! The sword was very sudden. Not only was it powerful, but it was also extremely fast. Therefore, the man in blue, Bei Qin, didn't have time to use the Big Dipper star curtain. He was struck by this violent sword strike and was forced to retreat. However, he was also a genius, so in the moment of crisis, he activated a set of star armor. Bei Qin was sent flying. Although he was sent flying, he wasn't injured. However, the blood in his body kept churning. Obviously, this sword had caused him to suffer a loss. Berserk Dragon breaks the sky. At that moment, Chong Lu attacked again. The giant black sword in his hand transformed into a giant black dragon that quickly charged over. This was a high-grade Earth-class technique. When it was used, the momentum was quite terrifying. Big Dipper connects the sky. Bei Chen's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that his opponent could use such a powerful killer move consecutively. He had just been hit, so the spiritual power in his body was very chaotic. Now, he could only react hastily. He roared and crazily urged his spiritual power to form 7 stars in front of him to block the terrifying black dragon gale. Bang bang! There was another earth-shattering collision. Bei Qin retreated dozens of steps again. Every step he took cracked the void. However, he used this opportunity to quickly stab out 3 times with his sword. Clang! 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 These 3 swords were like a meteor shower that quickly crashed into Chong Lu's body. However, Chong Lu's defense was too terrifying, so Bei Qin still didn't succeed. When Chong Lu saw this scene, he laughed loudly. He was wearing the earth armor, and his entire body emitted a dignified aura. The giant black sword in his hand stirred up a gust of wind as it continued to attack Bei Qin. The battle between the two was earth-shattering. The momentum was very terrifying. When the surrounding people saw this, they were even more amazed. Heavens, this Chong Lu is too terrifying. What kind of defense does he have? How can he be so strong? Earth Constitution. The legends are true. He really does have the Earth Constitution. In the crowd, an elder exclaimed. The others were puzzled and asked, Senior, what exactly is the Earth Empress physique? Royal Heaven Empress, These are two types of physiques that have been passed down since ancient times. Among them, those with the yellow sky physique cultivate very quickly. They can be said to be favored by the heavens and earth. As for those who possess the earth constitution, their defense is extremely strong. Even if they don't cultivate any special defensive techniques, they can still reach a heaven-defying level. It's actually a legendary physique passed down from ancient times. Everyone exclaimed after hearing this. He didn't expect that Chong Lu had such a background. In front of him, North Star was forced back once more. He was incomparably gloomy. In the next moment, he said coldly, "I have a high-grade Earth rank martial art too. 13 starry swords." Bei Chen switched to a different sword technique. Suddenly, the aura on his body changed. He no longer focused on defense, but was filled with a terrifying killing intent. With the swing of his sword, the sky was filled with twinkling starlight. Then, streaks of sword light shot into the sky, turning into huge stars that shone in the sky. Everything within a radius of 10,000 miles was illuminated. A huge star map formed above everyone's heads. It rotated rapidly, emitting a mysterious power. Then, these stars turned into sword light again and quickly slashed down. The sword light that came down was much stronger than before. Each of them was extremely terrifying. In an instant they enveloped Chong Lu. Chong Lu shouted loudly. Then, the earth armor on his body trembled, emitting a dazzling light. It continued to expand like an exquisite pagoda, enveloping him and forming a powerful defense. Mysterious runes began to form on his body. This was the power of his bloodline. It was his unique earth constitution. At this moment, when he used it, it was as if 10,000 mountains were pressing down on everyone's heads, causing their hearts to tremble. Boom! Boom! At the same time, he waved his huge black sword, bringing with it a terrifying power of wind and thunder, and quickly slashed forward. Boom! Boom! The terrifying sword light collided, causing the world to shake. Tens of thousands of rays of light shot out in all directions. The entire mountain range trembled, and the surrounding mountain range kept shaking. Some of them directly split open. So terrifying. Everyone looked at the piercingly cold sword light, and their hearts turned cold. They couldn't resist such an attack at all. They couldn't even block it. Amidst the attacks that filled the sky, Chong Lu relied on his terrifying earth constitution and didn't dodge at all. He stubbornly resisted. On the other side, Bei Chen executed his footwork. He stepped on the Big Dipper and kept dodging. Although there was no victor for a while, Bei Chen Lu was clearly at a disadvantage. But it was clear that North Star was at a disadvantage. It was only a matter of time before he lost. Damn it! How can this guy's earth constitution be so strong? Bei Chen's face was gloomy and unwilling. Because he didn't expect that the other party's constitution could actually restrain his attacks. It was really unexpected. However, at this moment, Bai Zijing spoke. He said in a deep voice, "Bei Chen, come back. You're not his match. Let Jianing go." As soon as he said that, Bei Chen's expression turned ugly, but he still nodded. He stepped on the Big Dipper steps and quickly returned to Bai Zijing's side. On the other side, the woman in red took a step forward and walked up. What? There's a switch? Seeing this scene, the million people were shocked. Chong Lu also stopped the huge sword in his hand. Millions of gazes looked at the woman in red in front of him. Everyone was puzzled. Who was this person? They had never seen her before. Could it be that this woman's strength is above that blue-clothed man's? They had seen many female geniuses. However, pure female swordsmen were few and far between. After all, swordsmen were existences that only pursued infinite attack power. Among female cultivators, there were very few who had such extreme personalities. Clang! Chong Lu stood the huge sword in his hand in the void, letting out a deafening sound. Then, he laughed and looked at the figure in front of him. Who are you? Tell me your name. After defeating Bei Chen, Chong Lu's confidence increased greatly. Therefore, at this moment, when he saw the woman in red walk up, he didn't think much of it. because he was very confident in his Earth constitution. It could be said that his defense was unparalleled. Probably, other than Bai Zijing, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone here. The woman in red looked very delicate, and she had a unique aura. That's right, a valiant aura. Although she was beautiful, she didn't have the graceful aura of a woman. Instead, she had a heroic spirit. It had to be said that it was indeed rare. The woman in red walked forward and stood quietly. Then she said coldly, "My name is Zhou Jianying. I'm Bai Zijing's junior sister." Chapter 2027. The woman in red walked forward and stood quietly. Then she said coldly, "My name is Zhou Jianying. I'm Bai Zijing's junior sister." "What? Bai Zijing's junior sister?" Hearing this, everyone was in an uproar. Bai Zijing was very terrifying. His junior sister should be pretty good too. On the other side, Chonglu also asked in a deep voice, "What? You want to stand up for your senior brother? In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless." The woman in red, Zhou Jianying, said indifferently, "If you have any means, just use them. However, I only need 3 moves to deal with you." "What? 3 moves?" Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They couldn't believe their ears. Everyone had seen Chonglu's Earth physique. Even a powerful swordsman like Beichun couldn't break through his defense. One could imagine how terrifying the Earth physique was. But now, this woman in red who had just appeared in front of them actually said that she would finish him off in 3 moves. This was simply a fantasy. For a moment, even the older generation figures and the surrounding geniuses frowned. Could it be that this woman in red has something to rely on or a unique move? After Chonglu heard this, he laughed out loud. "Finish me off with a move. You're quite arrogant. However, you're underestimating my Earth physique too much. You won't succeed. It's useless to say more. Make your move." On the other side, the woman in red, Zhou Jianying, was unwilling to say anything. Her jade-like hands gripped the long sword at her waist. It was a red long sword. It was very thin, only 2 fingers wide. Mysterious runes were drawn on the blade of the sword. "Beauty, just make your move. I won't dodge." Chonglu laughed. He was very confident in his Earth physique. Buzz! As soon as he said that, a red sword shadow quickly flashed in the void. Clang! Immediately after, a deafening sound rang out. Then, everyone's ears went numb, and their faces turned pale. They quickly sealed their hearing, and all of them looked terrified. What happened? They were all stunned because the sword light was simply too fast. In the next moment, the surrounding geniuses and older generation experts all frowned. His expression was extremely solemn. Earlier, they had thought that the red-clothed woman was boasting. But now, it would appear that she was definitely not boasting. That sword strike just now made them feel a sense of fear and trepidation. They didn't catch the sword shadow at all. Demon Lord's complexion changed greatly. To be honest, he did not have an advantage in terms of speed. In fact, he was at a disadvantage. Because he was using a heavy sword, his speed was ordinary. Only when he used some unique skills could he increase his speed. Under normal circumstances, his speed was not fast. However, he was not afraid of fast opponents because his defense was strong. If his opponent could not penetrate it, it would be useless no matter how fast they were. But this time, he was truly stunned. That was because his opponent's speed was simply too fast. It was so fast that he couldn't even react in time. Fortunately, he possessed the Earth constitution. Thus, he was currently wearing a layer of Earth armor. When the sword slashed onto the Earth armor, it emitted an incomparably sonorous sound. Damn it! How could this be? Then, Demon Lord exclaimed. That was because a crack had appeared on the Earth armor he was wearing. From the looks of it, it was a full 1/3. What? The Earth armor was split open? Hearing this news, everyone was even more shocked. This was even more shocking than not being able to catch the other party's sword shadow. That was because the other party's speed was fast. If his attack power was not good enough, he would not be able to catch it at all. But now, it seemed that not only was the other party fast, but his attack power was also terrifying. One sword strike was enough to split open the earth armor. The second sword strike! Just as everyone was in a daze, the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, spoke again. Then, another earth-shattering sound was heard. This time, they still did not see how the other party attacked. They did not see how the sword light appeared. They only heard Demon Lord scream. His eyes were wide open, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. That was because the earth armor on his body had been completely split open. A vacuum was revealed. How is this possible? How is this possible? Isn't the other party's attack power too strong? 2 sword strikes and the earth armor was split open? This made Demon Lord's hair stand on end. The earth armor was not a treasure. It was a kind of magical ability that extended from his earth constitution and bloodline power. Normally, even a mighty figure would not be able to break it open. But now, it was split open by 2 sword strikes. Everyone swallowed their saliva. The red-clothed woman in front of them was several times stronger than the blue-clothed man from before. However, at this moment, the nightmarish voice sounded again. The third sword strike! Damn it! Demon Lord roared angrily. Speed was not his strong suit, so he could not dodge at all. He could only take the other party's sword strike head-on. In the next moment, he changed his angle, so that the earth armor that was not split open faced the sword light. At the same time, he activated the defensive inner armor on his body to quickly resist. Bang! In the next moment, he screamed and was sent flying backward. His huge body directly tore through the void. It was useless. Everything was useless. Even if he changed his angle, the other party's sword chi still accurately entered the armor that was split open. Then, the inner armor on Demon Lord's body was also split open. Fortunately, he had the earth constitution. Otherwise, this sword strike would have directly split him into 2 halves. But even so, he was still injured. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth into the void. You've lost. In front, the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, slowly withdrew her sword and said coldly. The surroundings were quiet. No one spoke. This was because everyone was stunned. The million cultivators were completely stunned by these 3 sword strikes. What kind of 3 sword strikes were these? They couldn't describe it at all. At this moment, they felt a surge of emotion. At the same time, there was a deep chill in their hearts because they realized that even if they faced these 3 sword strikes, they wouldn't be able to resolve it at all. Other than resisting it head-on, they couldn't think of any other way. But it was useless to resist it head-on. Even Demon Lord, who had the Earth Constitution, couldn't resist it, let alone them. In the distance, Demon Lord struggled to stand up from the void. He covered his wound with a pale face. He wanted to fight again, but his body didn't allow him to fight anymore. Because he spat out another mouthful of blood. He was very unwilling. He came this time to challenge Bai Zijing. But now, Bai Zijing didn't make a move at all. Just a junior sister of the other party had seriously injured him. This made him extremely unwilling. At the same time, there was a strong fear in his heart. His junior sister was already so powerful. What kind of terrifying level had Bai Zijing reached? Chapter 2028. Unexpectedly, Bai Zijing did not make a move at all. Just a junior sister of the other party had severely injured him. This made him extremely indignant. At the same time, there was a strong sense of horror in his heart. His junior sister was already so powerful. What terrifying level had Bai Zijing reached? For a moment, everyone fell silent. What a fast sword! At this moment, a figure exclaimed from the distant horizon. This figure was a young man wearing a red robe and had a handsome face. It was Lin Xian, who had rushed all the way to Mount Hua. He had just arrived near Mount Hua when he saw Zhou Jianying's 3 sword moves and immediately exclaimed. Because these 3 sword moves were too fast, even he was a little shocked. Could this be the strength of that Bai Zijing? He is indeed very strong. No wonder he is so famous, Lin Xian thought to himself. The next moment, a golden light appeared in his eyes as he looked forward. However, he soon frowned and even exclaimed softly. This was because he discovered that the one who attacked was not the legendary Bai Zijing, but a woman. A woman in red. Moreover, he was somewhat familiar with this woman in red. After thinking for a while, he remembered that he knew this woman in red. Zhou Jianying, why is she here? Lin Xian was surprised. This woman in red was none other than Lin Xian. Back in the Tianan region, when the younger generation of the Azure Dragon Association was competing, Lin Xian had seen her before. Moreover, they had exchanged blows. At that time, Zhou Jianying was one of the 4 great geniuses of the Tianan region, and her sword intent was very sharp. However, he did not expect her to appear here now. Furthermore, from the looks of it, the other party's strength had undergone an earth-shattering change. Meeting an old friend here made Lin Xian very emotional. It seems that I'm not the only one who had a fortuitous encounter. This Zhou Jianying definitely had a great fortuitous encounter, Lin Xian muttered to himself in a low voice. Indeed, if not for a fortuitous encounter, how could she have come to the middle ground from the small island Nantian region? Moreover, her strength had become extremely strong. As for what kind of fortuitous encounter she had, Lin Xian did not care. What he cared about now was the other party's strength, and which one was Bai Zijing. It was because Bai Zi was actually his opponent this time. Originally, Lin Xian thought that this was just a battle between the two of them. He did not expect Bai Zijing to create such a grand spectacle. If he wanted to challenge everyone on Mount Hua, it would not be his business. Therefore, Lin Xian was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he quickly joined the crowd and watched silently. Lin Xian's arrival did not attract much attention. He was not famous in the Tai dynasty. Moreover, he was only a 6-star king right now. This kind of cultivation was not outstanding among the millions of martial artists. There were quite a few mighty figures around. Apart from that, there were also peerless geniuses and powerful elders. Thus, no one paid any attention to a mere 6-star king. At this moment, their gazes were all on the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, in front of them. Who else wants to challenge me? Feel free to step forward. At the front, Zhou Jianying coldly spoke. Her voice clearly rang out in everyone's ears. If there's no one, you'll have to respect my senior brother Bai Zijing as the #1 swordsman of the younger generation. Hearing this, the millions of martial artists were enraged. The #1 swordsman was an unparalleled honor, because there could only be one #1 in the younger generation. However, at this moment, a loud laugh came from afar. The #1 swordsman of the younger generation? What an arrogant tone! But I'd like to see if he's qualified or not. Hearing this voice, the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, raised her eyebrows and looked into the distance. The millions of martial artists in the surroundings also turned their heads. In the distance, a figure walked over quickly like a fleeting shadow. At first, he was still on the horizon, but in an instant, he arrived in front of the crowd. What a fast movement technique! Everyone was shocked. Just by looking at the speed of the movement technique, they knew that the person who came was definitely not an ordinary person. Lin Xian was in the crowd. He also narrowed his eyes and looked forward. The person who came was a young man with an evil charm. He was dressed in black and had a handsome face. However, there was an evil aura around him. As soon as he appeared, he looked at Bai Zijing and said coldly, "If you want to become the #1 swordsman of the younger generation, you'll have to ask if I, Shangguan Qi, agree to it." "Shangguan Qi, he's evil sword Shangguan Qi!" The surrounding martial artists exclaimed. They did not expect him to come too. Evil sword Shangguan Qi, the top swordsman of the younger generation. His reputation was comparable to Bai Zijing's. However, Bai Zijing was the first prince's man, while Shangguan Qi was the third prince's man. They did not expect him to finally come. Things were getting interesting. The experts sent by the third prince were here. The 8th prince and the other princes would probably send their experts here too. This time, it would be impossible for Bai Zijing to succeed if he wanted to challenge everyone. Yes. Putting the others aside, Shang Guanqi alone is extremely terrifying. I wonder if Bai Zijing can defeat him? The surrounding martial artists discussed animatedly. The seniors and supreme talents also looked solemn. They knew that an expert had finally made a move. However, the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, smiled and stared at Shang Guanqi. Your evil sword, Shang Guanqi? Great. I wanted to look for you. If I defeat you, I should be able to become famous. Facing Shang Guanqi, Zhou Jianying was not afraid at all. Instead, she was excited. She felt that the sword aura in her body was surging rapidly. However, Shang Guanqi smiled evilly and said, Girl, you're quite powerful, but you don't stand a chance against me. Let your senior brother make a move. We'll know if I have a chance after we try. Zhou Jianying snorted coldly. In the next moment, her jade-like palm grabbed the red sword at her waist again. Buzz! Another sonorous sound was heard. Then, a fine sword radiance flashed across the sky. This sword was so fast that the crowd could not catch it. Clang! However, Shang Guanqi was not afraid of such a fast sword at all. He drew out a gray long sword and blocked it in front of him. Suddenly, the sound of metal colliding was heard. It was extremely terrifying. Shang Guanqi blocked the lightning-like sword aura calmly. He blocked it. The surrounding martial artists cheered excitedly when they saw this scene. That was because the red-clothed woman's fast sword had given them too much pressure. In fact, they could not think of anyone who could block it. However, the moment Shang Guanqi appeared, he blocked it easily. This made everyone very excited. As expected of Shang Guanqi, he lived up to his reputation. His reputation was not inferior to Bai Zijing's. The surrounding martial artists were excited. The red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying, also frowned. This was the first time someone could block her sword. It seemed that this was a terrifying enemy. Chapter 2029. However, it was impossible to defeat her. Soon, Zhou Jianying would use her second and third sword. The terrifying sword light turned into continuous lightning, quickly slashing forward. However, the evil young man opposite her, Shang Guanqi, dealt with it calmly. The gray long sword in his hand also turned into a dazzling sword screen, blocking Zhou Jianying's attack. Both of them were very fast, and all kinds of sparks could be heard from time to time in the sky. Everyone was dazzled. Only the older generation experts and peerless geniuses could still keep up with their movements. The others couldn't see them at all. They could only see blurry afterimages. As expected of Shang Guanqi, he was indeed incomparably terrifying. Even a strong physique like the thick earth physique couldn't defend against the sword technique, but he was completely fine. Great, I think Shang Guanqi will definitely win. Don't let your guard down. That woman in red is also very terrifying. She's not famous at all, but she's actually able to tie with Shang Guanqi. Don't you think it's too terrifying? Moreover, she's only Bai Zijing's junior sister. Do you think the two of them will win? Everyone was discussing. However, at this moment, Lin Xian said indifferently, although both of them are very strong, it seems that Shang Guanqi will be able to win. Hearing this, some people nodded, while others disagreed. Someone asked again, how many moves will it take to win? It seems that it will take at least 100 moves. Lin Xian voiced his guess. Hearing this, the others sneered and shook their heads. What a joke, 100 moves! Why would there be a need for so many moves in a battle between experts? I think 30 to 50 moves should be enough. It definitely won't exceed 30 moves. This kid is obviously talking nonsense. He's just an ordinary 6-star king. What can he know? He probably can't even see the speed of the two of them. Feeling the aura emitted by Lin Xian, everyone shook their heads. In their opinion, Lin Xian was just a person with good talent, but in front of so many geniuses, he was simply not enough. For a moment, no one believed Li Xian's words. The battle between the two was very intense. In the blink of an eye, dozens of moves had passed. However, at that moment, Zhou Jianying started to frown. She discovered that her opponent was truly very powerful. Furthermore, he was so powerful that it surpassed her expectations. One must know that she was very confident in her sword technique. Other than her senior brother Bai Zijing, she had never been afraid of anyone in the younger generation. But now, her opponent's swordsmanship was so sharp that it could block her attack. Even the terrifying defense of the thick earth physique couldn't block it, but the other party actually blocked it. 1. At this moment, Zhou Jianying shouted and raised the red sword in her hand. On the body of the sword, a bright light blossomed. Red runes flashed rapidly and connected together. For a moment, more than half of the space was enveloped by this red light. Terrifying sword runes flickered in the void, emitting a mysterious aura. Feeling this aura, the expressions of the surrounding martial artists changed. Some of them even cried out in alarm. Look, the other party is about to use his ultimate move. Blazing Red Rock Slash. At this moment, Zhou Jianying used her ultimate move. With the red sword as the center, the entire space around it was covered with a layer of red runes. A terrifying murderous aura appeared in the void, shaking the void. Then, as the sword slashed down, the runes in the sky trembled rapidly. Ha ha! Take my evil god sword technique! On the other side, Shang Guanqi wasn't afraid at all. He laughed loudly. Immediately, the sword light in his body soared into the sky. A few terrifying sword chi enveloped him, forming a powerful battle suit. Not only that, but there were also streaks of gray sword chi revolving around him. He seemed to have turned into a god of death. He was abnormally sharp. Clang! 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 The red sword light and the red sword runes in the sky collided with the gray sword chi, letting out thunderous sounds. The entire void was torn apart in an instant. Countless spatial cracks appeared. Boom! Then, the two sides collided intensely and a terrifying force surged into the distance. Suddenly, a terrifying hole was torn in the sky. A huge black hole appeared and spun rapidly, completely engulfing a mountain. Seeing this scene, everyone's scalp went numb. They swallowed their saliva and quickly retreated. That was because this attack was simply too terrifying. If they were hit by these attacks, they wouldn't be able to resist at all. These two people were too heaven-defying. Although they hadn't reached the level of a mighty figure, their combat strength had already surpassed that of an ordinary mighty figure. A peerless genius, this was a true peerless genius. The surrounding people discussed animatedly. They clenched their fists in excitement. In the distance, Bai Zijing stood with his hands behind his back, watching quietly. Meanwhile, the man in blue Bei Chen frowned. Because he was very clear about Zhou Jianying's strength. Other than Bai Zijing, not many people could contend against her. But now, Shang Guanqi could actually contend against her. Moreover, he could even withstand Zhou Jianying's ultimate move. It really surprised him. In front, the two of them fought even more intensely. Every time they collided, it was astonishing. However, at this moment, Shang Guanqi snorted coldly. Gray sword chi emitted from his body. They quickly intertwined, forming a terrifying domain that instantly enveloped the world. Oh no, Shang Guanqi has unleashed his king domain. It's already been more than 90 moves. Is the outcome about to be decided? On the opposite side, Zhou Jianying also snorted coldly. The red sword light behind her soared into the sky as she also unleashed her own domain. The two domains kept colliding in the air. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 moves had passed. They had actually exchanged more than 100 moves. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. Originally, they thought that the outcome would be decided in 30 moves. They didn't expect that it would take more than 100 moves. Lin Xian narrowed his eyes. This scene was similar to what he had expected. Next, it was time for Shang Guanqi to use his ultimate move. Thinking about it, the battle should be over soon. Sure enough, at this moment, Shang Guanqi floated in his own domain and laughed loudly. His black hair had actually turned gray at this moment, and it even carried an aura of death. Sword of the Evil God. His handsome face became abnormally evil. Then, Shang Guanqi swung his sword forcefully. Buzz! The sword slashed out, revealing its sharpness. The sky seemed to have been cut in half. An incomparably evil aura was emitted from the sword light, causing the surrounding people to tremble. Oh no! Feeling the sword chi, Zhou Jianying's face also changed. That was because he realized that the sword chi was not only fast and powerful, but it could also affect one's soul. The sword chi actually contained a soul power-killing move. Zhou Jianying was shocked. No wonder it was called the evil sword. It was indeed evil. She didn't dare to be careless and quickly defended herself. Chapter 2030. A set of red armor covered her body. At the same time, she opened her mouth and spat out a curtain of swords, forming a Milky Way defense in front of her. Bang! Zhou Jianying was shaken by this tremendous power until she kept retreating backwards. Her delicate jade-like feet stomped on the void, creating one black hole after another. Seeing this, the crowd heaved a sigh of relief. Although Zhou Jianying was pushed back, she did not suffer any serious injuries. She was only lightly injured. At this rate, she would not be defeated. But soon, they cried out in surprise. That was because after Shang Guanqi succeeded in his attack, he did not stop. Instead, he attacked even more fiercely. Evil sword blade. Shang Guanqi waved his long sword again. Suddenly, an even more terrifying gray sword chi slashed forward like a crescent moon. Damn it! Block it! Seeing that Shang Guanqi was attacking her again, Zhou Jianying roared. The red long sword in her hand seemed to have turned into a ball of terrifying fire. The red light in the sky quickly shot up into the sky and formed a huge storm. It wanted to burn the gray sword chi. However, the gray sword chi was too terrifying. It extinguished the flames in the sky and slashed on Zhou Jianying's long sword. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound was heard. Zhou Jianying's arm went numb, and she was pushed back again. Evil sword soul. Seeing that his opponent was pushed back again, Shang Guanqi laughed and attacked even more fiercely. His body was surrounded by gray sword chi. He was like a god of death floating in the void. The king's domain around him surged rapidly along with his arm. Boom! 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 In the sky, a huge gray sword chi slashed out and formed a demonic beast. It bared its fangs and claws like a huge dragon or a qilin. It tore the void apart and charged toward Zhou Jianying. Red Lotus Sword Chi Protection. Seeing this terrifying attack, Zhou Jianying did not dare to be careless. Her long sword suddenly exploded and turned into a red lotus, instantly enveloping her. Clang! The gray sword chi was too terrifying. It split the red lotus shadow and slashed on Zhou Jianying's body. Puff! Zhou Jianying flew out and crashed into a few mountains. Her delicate body trembled in the void. Not only that, she spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Her face was extremely pale. Defeated, he was actually defeated. She didn't expect that other than Bai Zijing, there would be someone who could defeat her. This really surprised her. The surrounding people were also stunned. The older generation experts and peerless experts were all frowning. Even Bai Zijing revealed an astonished expression for the first time. He squinted his eyes and stared coldly at Shang Guanqi, who was standing in front of him. Bai Zijing finally met an interesting opponent. He revealed a smile. He felt a little excited because these days, no one was a match for him. No one could contend against him. Geniuses were lonely. It was lonely at the top. When one reached a certain height, the feeling of not having an opponent was simply too unbearable. And now, he had finally found someone who could be his opponent. Therefore, Bai Zijing was very excited. Beside him, the blue-clothed youth, Bei Qin, sucked in a deep breath. This fellow is so strong. He was probably the strongest person in the younger generation aside from Bai Zijing. In the crowd, Lin Xian also nodded slightly. Indeed, this Shang Guanqi was very strong. Even he had to be careful when dealing with him. As expected of Wengzhou. Just the Tai dynasty alone had such powerful young geniuses. Looking at the strength of these people, they were definitely not weaker than the saints of the East. Now that they had reached their level, the meaning of the younger generation was different from that of ordinary people. Those below 300 years old were all called the younger generation. Lin Xian didn't know the real age of these geniuses, but there was no doubt about it. These people were the ones who had the most hope of becoming higher beings in the shortest amount of time and obtaining great battle prowess. Lin Xian was calm, but in other places, the geniuses had lingering fear. Damn, these people are too strong. I originally thought that the gap between us wasn't big, but now it seems that it wasn't the case at all. That's right. Fortunately, I didn't make a move. Otherwise, I would have been embarrassed. These were true peerless geniuses, far surpassing other ordinary geniuses. The older generation figures were also amazed. At this moment, Bai Zijing finally moved. He slowly stood up, looked forward, and said coldly, "You are qualified to be my opponent." "Is that so? But I don't want to fight with you now." The evil-looking young man, Shang Huanqi, shook his head. He had his own plans. Although he was strong, Bai Zijing was also very strong. He was definitely not weaker than him. And he had just finished a great battle with Zhou Jianying and had already exhausted a lot of his strength. He had to recover now and reach his peak before he could fight with Bai Zijing with all his strength. Otherwise, if he was not in the right state, he might be defeated. Therefore, he definitely wouldn't fight with Bai Zijing immediately. "Let me do it, Bai Zijing. I'll fight you." Another tall and straight figure walked out from the crowd. This was also a handsome young man. He was Li Mengbai, who had explained to everyone previously. Li Mengbai was also an A-list genius, far surpassing the other geniuses. He was very powerful. Therefore, when he came out, everyone also exclaimed in surprise, each and every one of them exclaiming in satisfaction. Because now, 4 or 5 peerless geniuses had already appeared. Each of them made them look up to them, excited them, and made their blood boil. However, Bai Zijing furrowed his brows. He said, "I remember that we seemed to have fought a year ago. At that time, you weren't my match." Hearing this, everyone was in an uproar. They didn't expect that the two of them had actually fought before. Li Mengbai said in a deep voice, "Indeed, I wasn't your match a year ago. But in the past year, my improvement is definitely not what you can imagine. Therefore, I am completely qualified to fight with you now." Speaking of this, a powerful sword aura suddenly erupted from Li Mengbai's body. Streaks of sword light were like long dragons, spinning rapidly. Immediately, everyone felt an extremely terrifying pressure. Although Li Mengbai was defeated a year ago, no one dared to underestimate him. Because the aura he was emitting now shocked these millions of cultivators. A defeated opponent wasn't qualified to challenge Brother Bai. Bei Qin, the young man in blue, stood out. He pulled out the Big Dipper sword in his hand. "Why don't I play with you first?" "Okay." Li Mengbai nodded and didn't refuse. He knew that if he didn't show off his powerful combat power, Bai Zijing wouldn't fight with him. So at the next moment, he made an inviting gesture. Big Dipper connecting the heavens. Bei Qin used a powerful killing move the moment he attacked. The Big Dipper sword in his hand released a terrifying aura. Suddenly, 7 huge stars appeared in the sky. Together, they formed a terrifying sword light that slashed downwards. In an instant, it enveloped Li Mengbai. Chapter 2031. 7 huge stars revolved in the sky, and the terrifying starlight turned the entire void into night. The power of the stars in the sky swept out crazily, completely enveloping Li Mengbai. Li Mengbai stood in the void with a solemn expression, and his body emitted sharp sword light. Facing the terrifying killing intent of the stars, he strode forward like a king. Buzz! He pulled out his silver-white longsword and slashed out horizontally. Instantly, the illusory stars were destroyed one after another. "What? He's actually so strong!" Bei Qin was shocked. Seeing that his killer move had been destroyed so easily, he was extremely shocked. Because a year ago, when the other party fought with Bai Zijing, he was also there. At that time, the other party's strength was on par with his. But now, after just a year, the other party could easily destroy his killer move. This meant that the other party's strength had completely surpassed his. Damn it, how much did this guy grow in strength in a year? They were all geniuses and had similar resources. Logically speaking, the increase in combat power should be about the same. But now, it seemed that this was far from the case. The other party's increase in combat power far surpassed his. Therefore, this surprised Bai Qin. No wonder the other party had the confidence to challenge Bai Zijing again. Bai Zijing also narrowed his eyes, slightly surprised. No wonder, your strength has indeed increased a lot. It seems that you're not weaker than junior sister Zhou. Since that's the case, you're qualified for me to make a move. What? Bai Zijing is going to make a move. Seeing this scene, everyone was abnormally excited. They didn't expect that after waiting for so long, Bai Zijing was finally going to make a move. On the opposite side, Li Mengbai also clenched the silver long sword in his hand tightly. This time, I won't lose to you easily. Make your move. However, Bai Zijing was very calm. His black hair fluttered, and his handsome face was extremely calm. His slender body exuded an extremely sharp aura. Come, let me see how much you've improved in the past year. You'll see. Li Mengbai said coldly, and then he made his move. A silver-white sword light lit up, and then the world lost its color. The surrounding wind blew, and even many mountain peaks were directly cut in half. Everyone exclaimed and retreated continuously, their eyes filled with intense shock. They thought that Li Mengbai was very strong, but they didn't expect that they had still underestimated him. This sword was even stronger than before. 1. On the other side, Bai Zijing also frowned. He had not expected that the other party had hidden his strength. So in the next moment, he drew his sword. His speed was very fast, even faster than the red-clothed woman, Zhou Jianying. No one could see the trajectory of his attack. They could only see a ray of light flashing through the void, followed by a shocking sound. The surrounding gale and silver-white sword light were instantly split in half. What a terrifying sword art! Seeing this scene, those exceptional experts and people of the older generation felt their scalps go numb. Li Mengbai's expression was also extremely solemn. He naturally knew how powerful and terrifying the other party was. Therefore, he did not think that he would be able to succeed in one go. However, the fact that his opponent was able to easily cut through his attack still surprised him greatly. It seemed like he wasn't the only one who had improved. The other party's improvement in the past year was also frightening. White Dragon Pierce. Li Mengbai did not dare to be careless and hurriedly used her ultimate move. Boom! Boom! Above the longsword, a white dragon shadow appeared, roaring in the void. As soon as it appeared, it shattered the surrounding void, forming a powerful and terrifying power that directly charged toward Bai Zijing. The million cultivators were shocked. They did not expect such a terrifying killing move to appear right after they exchanged blows. It was truly shocking. Facing the white dragon sword shadow, Bai Zijing also nodded slightly. Not bad, your combat strength has indeed improved greatly. However, your speed is not fast enough. You can't hurt me at all. This is not fast enough? The geniuses in the crowd were dumbfounded. This attack was already very terrifying, and they had no confidence in taking it on. However, Bai Zijing actually said that his speed was not fast enough. It was really despairing. Buzz! At the next moment, Bai Zijing took a step forward, and 10,000 rays of light flashed on his body. Then, 10,000 phantoms appeared, and each of them was exactly the same as him. They filled the void, making it impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. Myriad mirror movement technique. This Bai Zijing had actually cultivated this movement technique to such a profound level. Some people of the older generation exclaimed. This was a terrifying movement technique that could instantly create 10,000 clones. Each of them seemed real, making it impossible to distinguish between the real and the fake. However, there was only one real body, and it was hidden among the 10,000 clones. Only by finding it would they be able to destroy the clones. Since I can't find it, I'll destroy all of them. Li Mengbai took a step forward, and the aura on his body also changed. He was no longer calm and composed. Instead, he seemed to be filled with killing intent. His hair danced wildly in satisfaction. Behind him, a silver-white sword light quickly interweaved, forming a terrifying domain. It soared into the sky like a wave. These sword lights blotted out the sky and covered the earth. They emitted an astonishing killing intent that enveloped those clones. Boom! Boom! Clang! The clones that filled the sky were pierced by the sharp swords and quickly disappeared. Those clones became fewer and fewer, from tens of thousands to only a few hundred in the end. However, Li Mingbai's expression was grave. At the next moment, he frowned, and his expression changed drastically as he quickly retreated to the side. That was because he felt a biting cold killing intent coming from behind him. Poof! However, he was still a step too late. Behind him, a dazzling sword light turned into a long rainbow, instantly enveloping him. Damn it! His real body is actually here. When did he come over? Li Mengbai was extremely shocked. He did not expect Bai Zijing to secretly come to his side and even emit such a terrifying sword aura. He could not dodge it. The other party's speed was too fast, even faster than Zhou Jianying. With Li Mingbai's current speed, there was no way he could dodge it. Boom! So at the next moment, he activated the ring in his hand. That ring was extremely black, and it was worn on his middle finger. Everyone originally thought that it was a storage ring, but from the looks of it now, it was not at all. That was because the black ring suddenly emitted a monstrous black light, and then a huge pressure was emitted. Immediately after, a black tortoise phantom appeared, completely enveloping Li Mengbai. Clang! Bai Zijing's sword aura slashed the black tortoise, emitting a deafening sound. Countless cracks were torn in the void, and the black tortoise phantom also instantly dimmed. However, it did not shatter. Li Mengbai was also forced back a few thousand meters. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and a strand of hair also floated down. Dangerous! It was really too dangerous. If he did not have the black tortoise ring as a powerful defense, that sword strike would have seriously injured him. Chapter 2032. A defensive Dharma treasure. The surrounding people exclaimed. That black tortoise phantom was indeed terrifying. Even Liao Tian's expression was solemn. That was because that kind of defense was comparable to his Earth constitution. However, there was still a difference between the two. The Earth constitution was the power of the bloodline, and could be used continuously. On the other hand, Li Mingbai's defensive Dharma treasure was obviously a treasure, and could not be used for a long time. Therefore, it could only be used for defense and protection at critical moments. Black Tortoise Defensive Ring. It seems that not only did you grow stronger in this year, but you also had many fortuitous encounters. Bai Zijing was also slightly surprised. However, no matter how many treasures he had, it was useless. He took a step forward and attacked again. The Gale's sword in his hand flashed rapidly. Gale's sword blade. With a thrust of the sword, heaven and earth rumbled. The surrounding green gale spun rapidly, enveloping the entire void. That was not an ordinary gale but was formed by sword chi. Every gust of wind was a gust of sword chi. There were millions of them densely packed together. With a loud boom, heaven and earth were pierced through in an instant. The terrifying gale storm charged toward Li Mengbai. Boom! Li Mengbai was hit by the gale's sword blade again, and was instantly sent flying. The injuries on his body had worsened, but his eyes were as bright as the stars. Floating light phantom sword. Li Mengbai gritted his teeth and roared, counterattacking quickly. The silver-white sword in his hand kept flashing, and the domain behind him also rolled rapidly. Then, 36 light swords formed in front of him and quickly intertwined, forming a mysterious sword pattern. 36 sword lights were arranged neatly and combined together, emitting a monstrous murderous intent. Then, they quickly turned into shooting stars and charged forward. Bai Zijing was also surprised again. He had to admit that Li Mengbai had given him too many surprises. He did not expect that in just a year, Li Mengbai could grow to such an extent. The sword pattern formed by 36 sword lights was already enough to threaten him. Therefore, he also used his ultimate move. Suddenly, the sky was filled with violent winds, and lightning flashed in the wind. With a slash of the sword, the entire sky was cut in half. The sword pattern formed by 36 sword lights was also cut in half. Puff! Li Mengbai vomited blood and flew backward. A terrifying sword wound appeared on his body. Fortunately, Bai Zijing pulled back at the last moment. Otherwise, this sword might have cleaved him into two. When the crowd saw this scene, they cried out in surprise. As expected, Bai Zijing was too strong. No one could defeat him. However, everyone was shocked by the strength that Li Mengbai displayed. Because he was very strong, so strong that they couldn't fight against him. No matter which one it was, they were both peerless geniuses. They were not people they could fight against. Some of the geniuses in the crowd were discussing. This Li Mengbai is too terrifying. I was also present at the battle a year ago. At that time, he couldn't resist the white mirror at all. In fact, he was defeated within 10 moves. Now that they had exchanged close to 50 to 60 moves, it could be said that the increase in his strength was truly terrifying. That's right, this Li Mengbai was also a rare sword genius. On the other side, Lin Xian's eyes flickered as a smile appeared on his face. He knew he had met his match. This Bai Zijing was indeed strong enough. It was no wonder that millions of martial artists were afraid of him. He was definitely a terrifying opponent. However, he was not afraid. Instead, he was very excited. Because along the way, he had rarely met an opponent of the same level. Now that he finally met one, how could he not be excited? Moreover, the other party was also a sword genius, which made him even more satisfied. Do you think it's time for Shang Guanqi to make a move? Of course, Shang Guanqi has a lot of pills in his hands. He should be able to recover in this short period of time. That's great. I'll be able to see another battle between the two of them. Both of them were peerless swordsmen. I wonder who will be better. Sure enough, at the next moment, Bai Zijing also turned his head and looked at Shang Guanqi. Shang Guanqi stood up with a sinister smile on his face. He was about to say something when a voice came from the other side. Bai Zijing? I'll fight you. What? Hearing this voice, everyone was stunned. Why was there still someone coming out? Could it be that another sword genius had come? Everyone looked over. Even Bai Zijing and Shang Guanqi frowned slightly. They also turned their heads to look. Who is this kid? He's so unfamiliar. Could it be that a peerless genius had come? Everyone was discussing animatedly because although Lin Xian was only a 6-star king now, they didn't dare to underestimate him. However, no one dared to underestimate him. After all, those who dared to challenge Bai Zijing were all supreme geniuses. Kid, who are you? Shang Guanqi was a little displeased. He originally wanted to make a move, but he didn't expect another person to appear halfway. A handsome young man in a red robe slowly walked out from the crowd. My name is Lin Xian, and I'm here to challenge Bai Zijing. That's right, this red-robed man was Lin Xian. Lin Xian? Hearing this name, everyone frowned and fell into deep thought. However, after thinking about it, they realized that there was no genius called Lin Xian in the Taiyi dynasty. Could it be that he wasn't a famous young genius but a newcomer? Everyone was puzzled, and the older generation figures also frowned. They had never heard of him either. Shang Guanqi had never heard of him either. He immediately frowned and asked, Never heard of him? Who are you? What sect are you from? What are your achievements? I don't belong to any sect. I'm an itinerant cultivator. As for my achievements? Lin Xian thought for a while and then said seriously, I don't think I've lost before. Don't belong to any sect? Itinerant cultivator? Hearing this, everyone was stunned. How much can an itinerant cultivator achieve? No matter how talented you are, it won't do if you don't have enough resources. These peerless geniuses all had powerful sects or families behind them. Their cultivation resources could be said to be endless. That was why they could surpass the older generation figures who had lived for thousands of years at such a young age. However, could an itinerant cultivator do that? Everyone was extremely doubtful because they had never heard of him. What shocked them even more was the last sentence. Never lost? How is that possible? Even peerless experts like Zhou Jianying and Li Mengbai had lost before, but this young man in front of them actually said that he had never lost before? This was even more unbelievable. Some people even sneered, "You haven't lost before because you haven't fought at all. Kid, how many battles have you fought? How dare you say such big words? That's right, kid. Who do you think you are? A prince or a princess? The saint is the reincarnation of a great emperor. How dare you be so arrogant? Do you know what kind of person Bai Zijing is? I'm guessing that this kid definitely came out from some mountain valley and probably hasn't seen much of the world. I thought that the entire Tai dynasty was the same as their small village." Everyone shook their heads and sneered, not believing him at all. Chapter 2033. Kid, scram to the side and play. This is the sword meet on Mount Hua, a battle between top prodigies. Someone like you isn't qualified to participate at all. Cold shouts came over one after another. Bai Zijing frowned slightly, but he did not speak. While the man in blue beside him, Bei Qin, snorted coldly. Want to challenge Bai Zijing? Bring out your strength. Get past me first, otherwise, you don't have any chance. Zhou Jianying frowned even more. Her gaze stared fixedly at Lin Xian. Is it him? Why is he here? Could it be someone with the same name? Zhou Jianying was extremely puzzled in her heart. But when she looked at Lin Xian carefully, she discovered that the other party was actually really that person she knew. Immediately, her mind went blank. Around them, discussions sounded one after another. No one believed it at all. However, Lin Xian snorted coldly. The next moment, he took a step out. His gaze became sharp, and the sword chi on his body suddenly erupted. Boom! With a loud boom, heaven and earth turned upside down. A beam of sword light gushed out from Lin Xian's body, then pierced through the cloud layers. The terrifying sword chi emitted a sharp aura. The entire space froze in an instant. The mockery on everyone's faces disappeared and was replaced by horror. Even their bodies started to tremble. Those martial artists in the vicinity were directly sent flying by this sword chi. So powerful! Who is he? Damn it, this sword chi? How is it possible? A million martial artists cried out in surprise. And those geniuses and older generation figures also had their pupils constricted abruptly. They felt pressure, tremendous pressure. Although it was just a beam of sword chi, it pressured them until they could not breathe. It was as if a divine sword descended from the heavens, hanging above their heads. Even Bei Qin and Zhou Jianying's bodies trembled too, a hint of shock appearing in their eyes. Because this sword chi made them feel a sense of horror. But how is this possible? Apart from Bai Zijing, who else could do this? This young man in front of them actually brought them such a huge threat. This made them dare not believe it at all. Especially Zhou Jianying, she was even more shocked. She already recognized that Lin Xian came. But in her view, it was truly a surprise that Lin Xian could come here. But thinking about it, his strength should be inferior to hers. After all, the fortuitous encounters she had over the years were not something that ordinary people could understand. But unexpectedly, she was wrong. Furthermore, he was gravely mistaken. The aura that the other party was emitting at this moment was too sharp. It still surpassed hers. Moreover, she didn't know if this was the full strength of the other party, but without a doubt, it made her extremely shocked. The most shocked ones were the evil-looking man, Shang Guanqi, and the white-clad Bai Zijing. The two of them were extremely surprised. Originally, they did not pay any attention to this person who had suddenly appeared. But now, it seemed that the other party was very strong. He was definitely qualified to fight with them. Who was this guy? He was actually so powerful. Shang Guanqi's eyes lit up as he revealed an evil smile. He was so excited that he started to tremble. Bai Zijing's expression was solemn. He was indeed qualified to fight against me. Since that's the case, I'll watch another show. Shang Guanqi sneered. Then, in a flash, he went to the audience to watch. Bai Zijing turned around and stared at Lin Xian. Then, a terrifying aura surged from his body. Both of their auras were extremely terrifying as they constantly clashed in the air. In the void, countless cracks began to spread out rapidly. The surrounding martial artists cried out in alarm and kept retreating, because this pressure was just too strong. The closer they were to the two of them, the greater the pressure. They could only retreat. Otherwise, they would not be able to withstand it, and their bodies would split apart. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Their gazes also turned into sharp sword lights as they clashed in the air. There was an earth-shattering sound of collision. Then, many cultivators bled from their ears and directly fell to the ground, fainting. Sword soul. This was a collision of sword souls. Everyone, retreat quickly. Some of the older generation exclaimed and retreated frantically at the same time. Both of their sword intents were very sharp, and their soul powers were very strong. At this moment, the power of their sword souls erupted. The 1,000,000 cultivators could not withstand it at all. The surrounding people all retreated. There was a black mass in the distance, and only two figures were left on Mount Hua. They were like two sharp swords confronting each other. Buzz! At this moment, Bai Zijing made his move. He was very fast. The crowd could not see him drawing his sword. They only saw a hurricane in the sky. Then, the light that filled the sky swept out like waves. In an instant, it enveloped Lin Xian. The surrounding cultivators exclaimed. What a fast speed! It was too fast, far surpassing Zhou Jianying's previous speed. They could not see it clearly at all now. Even the other geniuses had pale faces, cold sweat flowing down their foreheads. But in the next moment, their pupils constricted as they exclaimed. Because they discovered that Lin Xian actually dodged it calmly. That's right, Lin Xian had indeed dodged it. The other party's sword speed was very fast, making him shocked. However, his heavenly dragon's 8 steps was not to be trifled with either. That kind of extreme speed was something that even a mighty figure could not compare to. Therefore, facing this biting cold sword light, Lin Xian executed the heavenly dragon's 8 steps and quickly dodged. At the same time, he flicked his finger. Immediately, the 9 underworld demonic sword appeared in the void and was grabbed by him. Then, he slashed out with his sword. Black flames spread, and a terrifying heat wave swept across the sky. Everyone was surrounded by this heat wave as if they were melting. And in this sea of fire, streaks of sword light appeared and slashed out rapidly. Those sword lights turned into black phoenixes that spread their wings and flew. They were like a black torrent as they quickly charged toward Bai Zijing. What a terrifying sword light! What a terrifying flame power! This person was not only a swordsman but also a fire elemental cultivator. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before the monstrous flames arrived, Bai Zijing's robes were blown apart. Feeling this heat, he nodded solemnly. Not bad, very strong, far beyond my expectations. However, such an attack is still unable to defeat me. Speaking up to this point, he let out a long roar and waved his sword, bringing about a terrifying gust of wind to resist the black flames. Wind and fire clashed, energy surged, and the entire sky was completely engulfed. Buzz! Not only that, his sword even turned into streaks of lightning as he slashed out crazily. Speed. He wanted to use speed to suppress Lin Xian. It was too fast. Everyone was dazzled and could not see it clearly. Those peerless geniuses were also terrified. At this moment, only Lian Beichen, Zhou Jianying, Li Mengbai, Lei Outyan, and the others could still see each other's trajectories clearly. However, it was also very strenuous. Although their souls could capture it, their reaction speed was probably too slow to avoid it. This was the most helpless situation. In other words, they could judge it but could not dodge it. At this moment, Zhou Jianying muttered to herself, "I wonder if he can dodge it?" When Beichen heard this, he shook his head and sneered. "What a joke. Even you can't keep up with such speed. How can that brat block it?" Chapter 2034. But very soon, he was stunned. Because he discovered that Lin Xian had really dodged. He was in complete disbelief. Not only did Lin Xian dodge, but he also quickly attacked. In the sky, the two of them were even faster than lightning. Their sword lights completely exceeded everyone's soul perception. No one could clearly capture how many sword strikes they had unleashed. One after another, cracks appeared in the sky, and one after another, black holes appeared. It was too fast. How could the two of them possibly possess such fast speed? It was not strange for Bai Zijing to possess such speed. Firstly, he was Zhou Jianying's senior brother. Zhou Jianying's speed was fast enough, so Bai Zijing's speed should be even faster. Moreover, Bai Zijing was a wind elemental martial artist and had an additional boost to his speed. However, what was even more surprising was that young man called Lin Xian. He was a fire elemental martial artist. Logically speaking, his sword qi should be incomparably violent. What was going on with his speed? He could actually keep up with Bai Zijing's speed and was not at a disadvantage at all. Everyone found it hard to believe. As they spoke, Bai Zijing and Lin Xian had already exchanged dozens of blows. Not only were their sword techniques fast, but their speed was even faster. At this moment, not to mention these sword lights, the two of them had already disappeared. Everyone could only see each other's afterimages when they collided. Normally, they could only hear the sounds of thunder and could not see the figures of the two people at all. Who exactly was this guy? How could he possess such fast speed? Li Mengbai was shocked. His injuries had already recovered by about 70% or 80%, but at this moment, his face was extremely pale. Because he could no longer keep up with the two of them. He had personally experienced how terrifying Bai Zijing was. However, that young man called Lin Xian was also so terrifying. But why had he never heard of the other party's name before? Where did this kid come from? On the other side, Shang Guanqi also frowned. He was slightly stronger than Li Mengbai, so at this moment, he could clearly see the situation of the two of them fighting in the sky. It was precisely because of this that he was extremely agitated. And the one who was the most surprised was Bai Zijing. Originally, he wanted to use the advantage of speed to suppress the other party. However, he did not expect the other party's speed to be so fast. Therefore, until now, the two of them were still tied. In the next moment, his figure flashed and stopped in the void. Clearly, the speed suppression had no effect. He would use other methods. At the next moment, he decided to use his killer move. 1. Storm Thunder Sea. Bai Zijing bellowed and slashed out with his sword. Suddenly, the wind in the sky flickered, and lightning struck. On one side was the power of wind, and on the other was the power of thunder. The two forces transformed into two sharp sword lights that intertwined with each other in the air. Then, it quickly slashed down. With a loud boom, a pitch-black hole was smashed open in the sky. Wherever the sword of wind and thunder passed, nothing could resist it. Furthermore, the range of the storm's power was simply too wide. Therefore, even Lin Xian was forced to retreat. He revealed his true form and let out a long howl as he looked at the incoming sword light of wind and lightning. In the next moment, he stomped his foot. Suddenly, mysterious sword runes appeared in the sky. They were like small swords and were abnormally sharp. Demon Slaying Sword Array. Here, Lin Xian used the Demon Slaying Sword formation. The aura on his body changed. The fiery and sharp aura in the past became decisive and murderous. A monstrous sea of blood surged and quickly formed in this Demon Slaying Sword formation. The smell of blood made even those peerless geniuses frown. Swoosh! 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 Once the Demon Slaying Sword formation appeared, it enveloped the entire sky. Then, blood-colored swordlights that filled the sky rushed out and collided with the sword of wind and thunder, resulting in an intense explosion. The incomparably terrifying sword chi of wind and thunder was successfully blocked. Not only that, but it was also besieged by these blood-colored swordlights. In the end, it dimmed and even disappeared in the sky. What? Bai Zijing's attack was actually blocked? This was too unbelievable. This was the first time, right? This was too exciting. This person could really contend with Bai Zijing. Moreover, they were locked in a stalemate. The surrounding cultivators were excited. Zhou Jianying also clenched her fists. What level had he reached? How could he contend with senior brother? In the sky, Bai Zijing was also shocked. The other party could actually block his killer move? It was indeed surprising. This was probably the most powerful person he had ever met in the younger generation. Therefore, he decided to go all out. "You're very strong and are qualified to make me go all out," Bai Zijing said in a deep voice. On the opposite side, Lin Xian also laughed loudly after hearing that. "Is that so? I just don't know if you can make me go all out." Arrogant, he's too arrogant. Facing Bai Zijing, was he still planning to hold back? Everyone was dumbfounded. Bai Zijing also snorted coldly. No one had ever dared to underestimate him, yet the other party dared to do so. This made him furious. On the opposite side, Lin Xian stood in the demon-slaying sword formation and quickly counterattacked. Below his feet was the demon-slaying sword formation, and above him, Lin Xian displayed the dragon sword's spiritual domain. Immediately, the green sword aura transformed into true dragons. Terrifying roars and sharp sword lights pierced through the clouds and shattered the void. The violent power made everyone tremble again. Heavens, he actually still has strength. This aura was even more terrifying than before. That was his king domain. It was actually a dragon. How was it formed? Everyone was stunned. Bai Zijing's expression also froze. The other party's strength had indeed become stronger again. This was beyond his expectations. Boom! In the sky, the green sword shadow transformed into a huge dragon. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out black flames. It was like a black waterfall pouring down. Bai Zijing didn't dare to be careless. He gripped his long sword tightly and quickly waved it, forming a huge wind sword blade that enveloped all the flames in the sky. This wasn't the end. After the dragon had spat out flames, it started to spit out frost. In an instant, the space froze and the ground was sealed in ice. The terrifying cold air made people tremble. Ice attribute. After the fire attribute, he displayed the ice attribute. Was he a dual attribute cultivator of ice and fire? Bai Zijing also frowned. He placed one hand on the long sword and flicked it lightly. Immediately, a crisp sword hum sounded, turning into thunderous golden ripples that resisted the frost in the sky. However, he still underestimated the power of the sea god ice. Therefore, for a moment, he was actually suppressed by the ice and hell flames in the sky. No way, was Bai Zijing going to lose? Heavens, this is too hard to believe. This person called Lin Xian was too terrifying. He could actually suppress Bai Zijing. Could it be that he was the #1 swordsman of the younger generation? Exclamations sounded one after another. No one dared to accept the reality in front of them. At this moment, even Li Mengbai and Bei Qing were shocked. However, Zhou Jianying shook her head. Impossible, senior brother wouldn't lose. Chapter 2035. At this moment, even Li Mengbai and Bei Qing were shocked. Zhou Jianying shook her head. Impossible, senior brother won't lose. Senior brother still has many trump cards that he hasn't used yet. As Bai Zijing's junior sister, Zhou Jianying knew very well that her senior brother still had some powerful trump cards that he hadn't used yet. Therefore, she wasn't worried. On the other side, Shang Guanqi also frowned. Although Bai Zijing was at a disadvantage now, he didn't think that Lin Xian would win easily. Because as a peerless expert, he had fought with Bai Zijing before. He knew that Bai Zijing's strength was definitely not limited to this. Whoever underestimated Bai Zijing would lose miserably. This was also why he didn't attack directly, and had to adjust his body to its peak before daring to fight against Bai Zijing. Swift Storm Dragon. At this moment Bai Zijing, who was suppressed by the power of ice and fire, suddenly roared. Then, his green sword turned into a hurricane that filled the sky, gradually condensing into a dragon shadow that instantly slashed out. Buzz! Crack! This sword was so sharp that the entire void was split into two halves. The power of ice and fire around him was also split apart by the sword. Its power was much weaker. Not only that, the swift storm dragon circled around him, creating a vacuum around him. Without the threat of ice and fire, Bai Zijing heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he waved his sword, and the swift storm dragon charged at Lin Xian. Lin Xian stomped his foot, and the demon-slaying sword formation under his feet immediately emitted 50 huge blood-colored sword chi that intertwined in the air, forming a huge blood-colored palm. It quickly slapped down, shattering the swift storm dragon into pieces. However, although the swift storm dragon was shattered, the energy exploded and blasted the blood-colored uncle into pieces. In an instant, the two attacks disappeared in the sky at the same time. Whoosh! Bai Zijing waved his hand, and the energy in front of him dissipated. Then, he didn't attack again. Instead, he stood quietly in the air. Kid, I have to admit that you're very strong. You've completely exceeded my expectations. To be able to fight until now, you're the strongest swordsman I've ever seen in the younger generation. However, do you think you can defeat me like this? Next, I'll let you see my true strength. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and their scalps went numb. His true abilities. This meant that Bai Zijing had yet to unleash his full power. Heaven! Without using his full strength, he was already so powerful. If he used his full strength, how terrifying would he be? At that moment, even the people of the older generation started to twitch their mouths. Lin Xian chuckled when he heard Lin Xian's words. However, it was a pity that he had hidden his strength as well. Let's see which of us is hiding more of our strength. He was also hiding his strength. Everyone was stupefied. This brat was too abnormal, wasn't he? He actually hid his strength as well. Damn it, I don't believe it. How could this kid be hiding his strength? He must be boasting. Bei Chun gnashed his teeth. Zhou Jianying's expression was solemn. To be honest, she didn't quite believe it either. But in the next moment, they all believed it. This was because Lin Xian's aura had exploded once again, reaching a new height. This height completely surpassed them. Even Shang Guanqi, who was watching the battle from the side, had a terrible look on his face. Bai Zijing was the first to bear the brunt, and his expression was even more solemn. He shouted coldly, and the sword chi in his body also erupted. A green sword intent quickly appeared, rushing into the clouds, turning into a gust of wind that swept in all directions. The current Bai Zijing was incomparably terrifying, as if he was a sword god. The powerful pressure made everyone's scalp go numb. Lin Xian's body also flickered with sword light, carrying an incomparably domineering aura. There were even dragon roars that sounded. Everything under the 9 heavens and 10 lands was penetrated by his sword chi. At this moment, he was like a supreme king, looking down on everything. This time, both of their auras were very powerful, and they clashed in the air. Boom, boom, boom. Thunder descended from all directions, and the two sword lights quickly collided, turning into the most dazzling fireworks that bloomed in the sky above everyone. Then, they quickly disappeared. Bai Zijing's expression was solemn. He didn't expect that when he used his full strength, the other party could still match up. It seemed that the other party also had a lot of hidden strength. However, he wouldn't be defeated. As the top genius of the younger generation, he had never been defeated before. So this time, he wouldn't allow himself to fail. Wind technique, wind kill. The long sword was swung, and the sword chi was like a rainbow, devouring the sky and splitting the earth. A huge green sword shadow was swung out from Bai Zijing's hand, quickly slashing forward. This sword was many times more powerful than the previous one. Feeling the power of this sword, everyone around trembled. Lin Xian, on the other hand, was excited. That's right, the other party was indeed a powerful opponent, worthy of his full strength. The sword crossed the sky, and the cold light illuminated a radius of 10,000 miles. At this moment, Lin Xian held the demonic sword in his hand, like a god of death, and was extremely powerful. Ka ka ka! Ice break! The sword Qi in Lin Xian's hand carried a terrifying cold ice. This was a killing move that he condensed with the sea god's ice. It was called Ice Break. At this moment, the blue sword Qi was unleashed, and everywhere it passed, everything was sealed in ice. The two sword lights collided in the air, and the void was mercilessly torn apart in an instant. Countless cracks spread out in the distance. Wind kill versus ice break. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Apart from the 100,000 feet tall Mount Hua, all the surrounding mountains exploded in an instant. Are they really just 6-star kings? Why do I feel that they have far surpassed us? A young genius's voice trembled. Everyone was a genius and a 6-star king, but the strength displayed by the other party was on a completely different level from them. This made them feel extremely desperate. Not to mention them, even the faces of the Almighties turned dark. They had cultivated for hundreds and thousands of years, but they were actually inferior to 2 young boys. It made them have the urge to vomit blood. They even felt their hair stand on end. Boom! At this moment, a huge explosion occurred in front. 2 sword lights exploded, tearing a black hole. The 2 of them also quickly retreated 1,000 miles and stabilized their bodies. What? Bai Zijing's wind kill was actually blocked? How was this possible? This was one of his trump cards. Bei Qin was extremely shocked, not daring to believe it at all. This wind kill was very terrifying. Once it was used, even mighty figures couldn't survive. It could be said to be one of the most powerful killing moves. But now, it was actually blocked by someone. Could it be that this kid could really defeat Bai Zijing? He was extremely shocked. At the side, Zhou Jianying shook her head. It was impossible. Although Wind Kill was one of Senior Brother's trump cards, it wasn't his strongest trump card. Just wait and see, Senior Brother still has a trump card. He definitely won't lose. On the other side, Bai Zijing was also shocked. He was afraid of the power of Wind Kill. However, the other party was actually able to block it. It indeed surprised him. Chapter 2036. However, just as Zhou Jianying had said, this was not his only trump card. He had an even more powerful killing move. Moreover, he would not allow himself to fail. Although the other party was strong, he was more confident in himself. With a furious roar, the green sword light on his body shone even brighter, quickly turning into a long green river that fell from the sky. Bai Zijing's aura continued to rise, and a green sword territory quickly appeared. It condensed beside him, becoming one with the green sword in his hand. What a terrifying domain power! Bai Zijing was probably going to launch his most ferocious attack. Everyone was shocked as they looked at the green sword energy in front of them. They were extremely shocked and retreated thousands of miles again. On the other side, Lin Xian also let out a long roar. Dragon-shaped sword energy surged on his body, turning into the dragon sword domain that enveloped him. The power of the sword energy also kept rising, as if a huge dragon was flying rapidly. Boom! Boom! The 2 of them did not make a move, but it caused a terrifying impact. The 2 king domains collided, and one turned into a shocking giant sword that pierced through the sky like a green sword. On the other side, dragon-shaped sword energy swept through the surroundings. The 2 collided intensely in the air, producing extremely violent energy. Even Almighties did not dare to touch such violent energy. Not good. Retreat quickly. Although everyone had already retreated thousands of miles, when they saw this scene, they all ran in all directions crazily. At this moment, millions of cultivators were like locusts, fleeing into the distance in a dark mass. Those people retreated thousands of miles away, but they realized that it was still not enough. In front of them, the sword energy turned into ripples that spread out in all directions. Everywhere it passed, the void was quickly sliced open. If there were cultivators around, they would not be able to block it at all. Therefore, they could only retreat again. Lin Xian and Bai Zijing, who were in the center of the storm, also suffered a great impact. Buzz! Bai Zijing was wearing green battle armor and looked extraordinarily valiant. Mysterious runes flickered on the battle armor, defending against the storm that filled the sky. On the opposite side, Lin Xian wore a black battle armor like a god of war. Boom! Boom! Both of their armors were of very high grade and were able to withstand the attacks of powerful beings. But now, in the face of this energy storm, it seemed to be somewhat insufficient. Humph! Therefore, Bai Zijing had no choice but to use other means. There was a cyan ring on his finger. It was not a storage ring, but a defensive ring. At this moment, he activated Swift and Fierce and poured it into the green ring. Immediately, the ring emitted light, forming a large green bell that enveloped him, forming a second line of defense. After doing this, Bai Zijing revealed a smile. His ring was a top-notch Earth-rank treasure. The defense formed was incomparably powerful. He was very confident. Moreover, this item was very precious. He guessed that the other party definitely did not have it. Now, the attack power of both of them was very strong. Whoever could gain an advantage in defense would be the final victor. Therefore, Bai Zijing was very assured now. When the crowd saw this scene from afar, they exclaimed in shock. Heavens, he actually has a supreme grade ring. The defense of this supreme grade ring was probably even stronger than Ho Tu's Ho Tu constitution. It's over, it's over. I wonder if that kid named Lin Xian has such a treasure? If not, it would be very difficult for him to resist such a powerful storm. I guess he definitely doesn't have such a defensive ring. That thing is very rare, and Bai Zijing must have spent a lot of effort to get it. That kid named Lin Xian definitely doesn't have it. Everyone discussed animatedly. As for Bei Qin and Zhou Jianying, they heaved a sigh of relief. They also thought that Bai Zijing had gained the upper hand. Lin Xian indeed did not have such a defensive ring. However, his abilities were not what ordinary people could imagine. The next moment, he snorted coldly, and a dragon-shaped sword chi rushed out of his body, transforming into a giant dragon that coiled around his body. True dragon protection. Lin Xian also used a second line of defense. What was that? A giant dragon? Seeing this scene, these people went crazy. They did not expect the other party to create a giant dragon phantom. This scene was too F*King spectacular. Not to mention these people, even Bai Zijing was stunned. Originally, he thought that he had gained the advantage in terms of defense, but he did not expect the other party to create a true dragon phantom to protect his body. Did he have to be so perverted? Impossible. It's definitely not a real true dragon phantom. It should be some kind of divine ability. I don't believe that he can compare to my supreme grade ring. Thinking of this, he shouted coldly and quickly charged over while resisting the two types of defenses. Galaxy Sword Technique. The long sword was swung out, and it was as if a galaxy had fallen. Starlight shone all over the sky, surrounding Bai Zijing. He quickly slashed forward. Dragon Roar! Lin Xian raised his hand and slashed. The black demonic sword turned into a black dragon and flew out. In the sky, the clouds churned, and the huge black dragon phantom flew quickly. In an instant, it collided with the galaxy that filled the sky. Then, energy erupted again. The two of them moved quickly and dodged. At the same time, Bai Zijing formed a seal with his left hand, and a white light flew out from his fingertip. Lin Xian waved the Armageddon Black Dragon Fist, and the violent fist exploded the void, shattering the finger light. The two of them had endless methods. Now, it was not only sword techniques, but also various divine abilities. This was also because the two of them had strong defenses that they could still withstand such violent energy. If it were anyone else, even if they were a mighty figure, they would have been smashed into pieces by now. Ah! Brat, take my strongest killing move, 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword. Buzz! Bai Zijing roared. At this moment, he did not hold back at all and used his most powerful killing move. Buzz, buzz, buzz! In the sky, a storm raged, and 9 sword lights appeared behind Bai Zijing. Among them, 3 were solid and connected heaven and earth, while the other 6 were illusory and hazy. What? It's actually the 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword. How does he know this sword technique? Heavens, hasn't this sword technique been lost for tens of thousands of years? He actually learned it. Exclamations sounded one after another. Obviously, this 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword was very famous in the Tai dynasty. As a result, when his name came out, these millions of cultivators exclaimed together. Sure enough, senior brother used his strongest killing move. Zhou Jianying was also extremely excited. On the other side, Beichen, Li Mengbai, Chong Lu, Laotian, and the other peerless geniuses were all extremely shocked. Just the 9 terrifying sword chis alone were enough to make them tremble. They knew that they could not even take one. In fact, even Sheng Guanqi's expression was extremely solemn. Because he originally thought that he could fight with Bai Zijing, and even had the confidence to defeat Bai Zijing. But now, it seemed that was not necessarily the case. If it was before, he still had confidence. But now that the 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword was used, he probably had no hope. Legend had it that this was not an earth-grade cultivation technique, but a heaven-grade cultivation technique. Chapter 2037. Legend had it that this was not an earth-tier cultivation technique, but a heaven-tier cultivation technique. It was a cultivation technique that had disappeared for tens of thousands of years. Unexpectedly, it actually appeared in Bai Zijing's hands after tens of thousands of years. And from the looks of it, the other party had already cultivated 3 strands of sword chi. Probably not many people below the realm of supreme powerhouses could contend against it. These peerless geniuses had ugly expressions. And those older generation figures were even more exclaiming. All of them widened their eyes as if they were injected with chicken blood. 9 revolutions Tianyuan sword. It was actually really the 9 revolutions Tianyuan sword. Heavens, he had even cultivated it to the 3rd revolution. This kid was going to defy the heavens. It's over, that kid called Lin Xian is definitely going to lose. 9 revolutions Tianyuan sword. That was a legendary heaven-tier cultivation technique. Once it was used, that kid would definitely not be able to block it. As expected of Bai Zijing, no wonder he dared to challenge the world's powerhouses. He could even find such a lost martial art. On the other side, Lin Xian also frowned. He could naturally feel the powerful threat brought by the 9 strands of sword chi behind the other party. And at this moment, hearing the exclamations of the people around him, he was even more shocked. Heaven-tier cultivation technique, that was actually a heaven-tier cultivation technique. Heaven, earth, mystic, and yellow cultivation techniques. At this moment, all of Lin Xian's cultivation techniques were earth-tier cultivation techniques. The good ones were peak earth-tier, and the bad ones were advanced earth-tier. But he did not have any heaven-tier cultivation techniques yet. He did not expect that the other party actually had a heaven-tier cultivation technique. But fortunately it seemed that the other party had only cultivated 3 strands of sword chi. The remaining 9 strands of sword chi were all illusory, and should not be able to be used. In other words, the other party was not an invincible existence. Moreover, he was not afraid. Although he did not have a heaven-tier cultivation technique, he had the great dragon sword soul, which was known as an offensive saint technique. Lin Xian did not think that the power of the great dragon sword soul was weaker than a heaven-tier cultivation technique. Therefore, he decided to use the great dragon sword soul to resist the other party's 9 revolutions Tianyuan sword. Stop struggling, the 9 revolutions Tianyuan sword is a heaven-tier cultivation technique, you can't resist it, Bai Zijing said in a deep voice. It's not up to you whether you can resist it or not. Just attack. Lin Xian snorted coldly. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed. Suddenly, the great dragon sword soul in his body began to circulate wildly, forming a dragon-shaped sword shadow in front of him. 1. As soon as the dragon-shaped sword shadow appeared, it brought with it a sky-high storm, as if a real dragon had descended into the world. It made everyone tremble. What was this? What a terrifying aura! Could that really be a dragon? This guy is too heaven-defying, right? Why do I feel that his aura is not weaker than that 9 revolutions heavenly sword? Cries of surprise could be heard one after another. Clearly, everyone was shocked by the dragon-shaped sword shadow. It can't be. Could it be that this brat also knows a heaven-tier cultivation technique? Beichen, Li Mengbai, and the others were dumbfounded. Zhou Jianying, on the other hand, was frantically shaking her head. That's impossible. Senior brother spent a lot of effort to obtain this heaven-ranked cultivation technique. It was impossible for that brat to have it. What the hell is this? Even Cheng Guanqi felt a chill run down his spine. Chong Lu, who was beside him, also had a face full of horror. Although he was very confident in his thick earth physique, when that dragon-shaped sword shadow appeared, he didn't dare to resist at all. In fact, that aura even made him tremble. Bai Zijing was even more surprised. Originally, he was full of confidence, thinking that as long as he used his greatest trump card, the 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword, the other party would definitely lose. That was because that was a heaven-tier cultivation technique. A heaven-tier cultivation technique was too terrifying. Perhaps even a peerless powerhouse might not have it. One could imagine how precious it was. However, he didn't expect that the other party could actually execute a dragon-shaped sword shadow. That sharp aura was not weaker than his heaven-tier cultivation technique at all. It even made him suspect that the other party also had a heaven-tier cultivation technique. He knew that he couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, who knew what other means the other party had? Therefore, in the next moment, he decided to activate his 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword. Although he had only cultivated to the 3rd revolution, this was a heaven-tier cultivation technique. He had unlimited confidence. Clang! In the next moment, he stretched out his palm, and a sword chi behind him began to slowly rotate. Along with his arm, it slashed forward. It was as if a galaxy had descended, tearing the sky apart. The power of this sword was too great, far surpassing all the killing moves that Bai Zijing had used before. This was a heaven-tier cultivation technique, and its power was unimaginable. Even those powerhouses in the distance felt their scalps go numb, and they didn't dare to resist it at all. Unless someone had a heaven-defying defense, or the same heaven-tier cultivation technique, they would be able to resist it. Boom! Looking at the sword shadow, Lin Xian's expression was also solemn. He held the dragon-shaped sword shadow in front of him, and swung his sword. Cold light flickered, and the dragon roared as it rolled over. Above the 9 heavens, a sword light descended from the sky. Boom! The 2 sword lights collided, and the sky was torn apart. The glaring light made the millions of cultivators not dare to look directly at it, and they all closed their eyes. The world seemed to have lost its color. The energy that filled the sky was like a wave, pushing everyone. Lin Xian and Bai Zijing immediately activated their strongest defense. The 2 of them were like small boats in the waves, floating with the wind. Bang! Bang! After the attack, the 2 of them each took 3 steps back, and there was a black hole under their feet. He blocked it. He actually blocked it. Damn it, how is this possible? Everyone went crazy. Zhou Jianying, Bei Chen, Li Mengbai, and the others roared crazily, not daring to believe it at all. Bai Zijing's pupils constricted. The other party was really able to block his 9 revolutions heavenly origin sword. This was too surprising. To be honest, this was the strongest young man he had ever met in his life. He had never thought that he would be in danger of failure one day. 2 swords, he still had the last 2 swords. If these 2 swords couldn't defeat the other party, he would really lose. Thinking of this, he roared angrily, and the spiritual power in his body circulated crazily like a huge tornado. Then, he stretched out 2 palms and quickly closed them. The remaining 2 sword lights behind him also spun crazily and quickly healed, forming an even more resplendent sword chi. What? He wanted to fuse the 2 sword chis. Seeing this scene, the seniors and peerless geniuses felt their scalps go numb. One sword chi was already so terrifying that even a powerhouse couldn't resist it. The power of the 2 sword chis combined was simply unimaginable. Lin Xian also felt the danger. In the process of the 2 sword chis fusing, even the spiritual power in his body trembled. He knew that this was the power of a heaven-tier cultivation technique, and he had to act quickly. In the next moment, golden light burst out from his eyes, and he was like a god of war, mighty and extraordinary. The dragon-shaped sword shadow in his hand grew even more crazily, reaching a length of 10,000 feet. It was as if it had really become a huge dragon, roaring at the sky. Dragon Soul Slash. 9 Revolutions Heavenly Origin Sword. After 2 furious roars, the 10,000 feet long azure dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it rushed out. Behind Bai Zijing, the 2 sword chis combined, turning into a huge sword light that tore through heaven and earth. Chapter 2038. Boom! The intense collision was like 100,000 bolts of lightning striking down. At this moment, no one could hear anything, and no one could see anything. There was only a glaring light that filled the entire world. The area within a radius of 100,000 miles was completely enveloped by a terrifying energy tide. At this moment, mountains collapsed and beasts roared. The demonic beasts below and the surrounding humans could not resist at all. It was not until a long time later that everyone regained their hearing and vision. Then, they all turned around and looked into the distance. How was it? Who had won? This was what they wanted to know the most. In front of them, the light gradually disappeared. Then, everyone saw 2 blurry figures. Then, the millions of cultivators were all stunned. Because in front of them, Lin Xian was holding the dragon-shaped sword shadow with both hands. His face was pale, and his forehead was covered in sweat. Using the Dragon Soul Sword shadow with all his might consumed a lot of his energy. Fortunately, he did not suffer any serious injuries. It seemed that he had just exhausted too much energy. On the other side, Bai Zijing was half kneeling on the ground. His hair was disheveled, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. It dripped into the void, making a tinkling sound. There was a bloody hole on his shoulder. It was pierced by sword chi. Obviously, he had been injured in the exchange just now. Moreover, his right shoulder was injured. As a result, he could not even hold his sword steadily. Everyone was stunned. It was not until a long time later that they exclaimed, "Heavens, Bai Zijing was injured. Bai Zijing actually lost. How is this possible? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Bai Zijing actually lost? It's really hard to imagine. I originally thought that Bai Zijing would become the #1 swordsman, but I didn't expect that an even more terrifying person would appear halfway. That kid is called Lin Xian, right? He's too heaven-defying." Countless exclamations sounded. As for the geniuses and older generation figures, they took in a deep breath of cold air as their eyes were filled with astonishment. Li Mengbai, Chong Lu, and Lei Yaotian were shocked. Although they thought that they were geniuses and unparalleled in the world, they did not have the capital to be arrogant in front of these 2 people. Beichen's eyes widened, not daring to believe that Bai Zijing would lose. At the side, Zhou Jianying shook her head crazily. Her beautiful face was also filled with shock. Impossible, senior brother lost? How did senior brother lose? How could he be so strong? She felt a strong sense of defeat, a feeling she had not felt for many years. The first time he had it, it was given to him by this young man named Lin Xian. At that time, she was one of the 4 great geniuses of the South Horizon region. Her opponents were only the other 3, but in the Battle of the Azure Dragon, she lost to a youth she had never seen before. That person was Lin Xian. Unexpectedly, the person who had defeated her back then had now defeated her senior brother, an even more dazzling genius. For a moment, she simply could not accept it. On the other side, Shang Guanqi was also stunned. His face was full of shock. To be honest, he had been full of confidence previously, thinking that he would be able to go up against Bai Zijing. But now, he shook his head in denial. Their ultimate moves far surpassed his. Even if he fought with his full strength, he would not be able to defeat them. He had been invited by the third prince to fight against Bai Zijing. But now he realized. He couldn't defeat Bai Zijing. Fortunately, someone had defeated him, and his goal could be considered a success. However, who exactly was this Lin Xian? Why had he never heard of him before? Would he be invited by the first prince in the future? Shang Guanqi had no idea at all. He decided that he would definitely report today's matter to the third prince properly. He had to let the third prince get such a talent. In the distance, Bai Zijing was also panting heavily. His face was extremely pale, and he was even twitching a little. It was because this sword was too sharp, and the remaining sharp sword intent on his wound made it impossible for his wound to heal. Therefore, he had really lost this battle. You won. You're the strongest swordsman I've ever seen. Bai Zijing sighed and said this. He was a conceited and proud person who had never lost before. Now that he had lost to an even stronger swordsman, he accepted his loss wholeheartedly. He did not have any complaints. The other party was really strong, and that dragon-shaped sword shadow made him feel like he was about to die. Lin Xian, on the other hand, took out 2 recovery pills and quickly replenished the spiritual energy he had expended. Then, he said in a deep voice, Bai Zijing, I want you to seal your sword for 100 years and not attack. Can you do it? What? Seal your sword for 100 years? Not attack? Hearing this, everyone was in an uproar, and none of them dared to believe it. They didn't expect Lin Xian to make such a request. The expressions of Bai Qin, Zhou Jianying, and the others changed. It was because Bai Zijing was the first prince's man, and he was a genius swordsman that the first prince liked and relied on. Seeing that the battle for the position of crown prince was getting more and more intense, asking Bai Zijing to seal his sword at this time was akin to cutting off one of the first prince's arms. Could it be that this Lin Xian was also sent by another prince? For a moment, everyone was shocked, and countless gazes fell on Lin Xian. After hearing this, Bai Zijing was also stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly. Forget it. He had defeated countless sword Dao experts all the way to the south and forced each of them to seal their swords for 30 years. He didn't expect that one day, such a thing would happen to him too. Shaking his head, he sighed and put away his sword. All right, I promise you. I really want to know who exactly you are. I'm Lin Xian, an itinerant cultivator from a distant island. As for the details, you can ask your junior sister Zhou Jianying. We're old friends, Lin Xian said calmly. After hearing this, Bai Zijing was extremely shocked. What? You know junior sister Zhou? He was really too shocked. He knew about Zhou Jianying's background. She came from a distant island. To them, that place was a barren land. They didn't expect a genius like Zhou Jianying to appear there. It was indeed surprising. However, such a stunning swordsman had appeared in such a barren land and even defeated him. This was even more shocking. He came back to his senses and clenched his fists. Lin Xian, you're very strong. Although I lost to you this time, I won't give up. The next time I meet you, I'll definitely defeat you. I'll be waiting for you. Lin Xian nodded solemnly, looking very serious. However, he continued to say, However, my target isn't you. My target isn't Bai Zijing. Everyone was stunned, including Bai Zijing. This was the first time he was looked down upon, and it was indeed a very unpleasant feeling. However, he was stunned the next moment. This was because he saw Lin Xian holding the sword in his right hand and pointing the tip of the sword at the sky. My target is there. Chapter 2039. The Arch. As soon as this voice came out, heaven and earth changed color. Countless bolts of lightning even descended from the sky. However, none of them could get close to Lin Xian. Everyone swallowed their saliva crazily. Bai Zijing's face was also pale. His hands were trembling slightly from the force. The other party's goal was actually the Arch. He didn't expect the other party to have such ambition. Becoming the Arch was the goal of every peerless genius. However, many people had fallen on this path. He was talented enough, but he didn't dare to have such a goal. Because he knew that becoming the Arch was simply too difficult. It was an existence that stood above everyone, sweeping through the ages and dominating all directions. One had to experience countless battles and step on the heads and corpses of countless geniuses to reach the peak. It could be said that in the entire true spirit world, in the 5 continents, only one person could become the Arch in the end. And this was just a conservative estimate. Or rather, there was none. However, this young man in front of them actually had such confidence, and was determined to become the Arch. It was simply unbelievable. Ha ha ha, what big words. You actually want to become the Arch? Do you know what kind of existence the Arch is? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Just as everyone was in a daze, a disdainful voice sounded. Then, everyone turned their heads in shock, wanting to see who dared to provoke Lin Xian at this time. Bai Zijing also frowned. He could naturally feel the powerful force contained in this voice. Lin Xian's expression was calm. No matter how difficult it is, I have to walk this path. Is that so? Looks like you really don't know what's good for you. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. This was a very young man with a jade-like face, sharp eyebrows, and starry eyes. He wore a sword robe and emitted a sharp aura. It was like an unsheathed sword. The Arch was an invincible existence that swept through the ages. Every one of them was unique and couldn't be replicated. Moreover, the Arch had displayed heaven-defying aptitude when he was young. Do you think you can be compared to the Arch with your current appearance? What a joke! In my opinion, you're just an ant. This young man in a sword robe laughed arrogantly. Everyone else was shocked. Who was this kid? How dare he speak to Lin Xian in such a manner? Who are you? Lin Xian also furrowed his brows and coldly asked. He was also somewhat displeased with this insolent youth. Who am I? Ha ha, kid, listen up. I'm Tanny Fei from the Dian Holy Land. What? Someone from the Dian Holy Land? The surrounding people exclaimed. The Dian sacred ground was also a very famous sacred ground. Moreover, the aura of the young man in front of them was extremely powerful. They could not help but be shocked. At this time, the young man called Tanny Fei sneered and said again, I came this time to meet that Bai Zijing. I want the world to know who is the true #1 swordsman. What? Another one who came to challenge the White Peace Realm? Everyone was shocked, but soon, their expressions became very strange. Where's Bai Zijing? Get him to come out and fight me. Tanny Fei was extremely arrogant, pointing his sword at the world. This made everyone even more silent. At this moment, Bai Zijing also covered his wound and said in a deep voice, I'm Bai Zijing. However, I'm no longer the #1 swordsman. You've got the wrong person. What? You've lost? Tanny Fei immediately frowned because Bai Zijing was in a very sorry state now. His aura was chaotic, and he was injured. No matter how he looked at it, he was different from the legendary peerless swordsman. Could it be that you've lost? Tanny Fei frowned. Judging from the situation in front of him, it was very likely that Bai Zijing had lost. So at the next moment, he asked coldly, Who defeated you? Him. Bai Zijing stretched out his finger and pointed to the front. Then, Tanny Fei turned his head and looked in that direction. At the next moment, he was stunned. Because he realized that Bai Zijing was pointing to none other than Lin Xian. What? This kid is the #1 swordsman? Tanny Fei frowned, then the corners of his mouth curled up in disdain. Kid, fight me! However, I advise you to obediently give up the title of the number 1 swordsman because you're no match for me at all." At the same time, he sneered. "What by Zijing? He's so powerful, but I didn't expect him to be a piece of trash." Humph. Hearing that, Bai Zijing was enraged. He had never been looked down upon like that before, so even though he was injured now, he had to attack. With a furious roar, the spiritual power in his body circulated crazily as he activated the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Origin Sword. Suddenly, 9 sword lights appeared behind him again. One of them turned into a sharp sword chi and quickly slashed forward. Buzz! What? In an instant, Tan Yifei's expression changed. He didn't expect the other party to be able to unleash such a terrifying sword light. The sword chi made his hair stand on end. He didn't dare to be careless. He opened his mouth and spat out a red light shield in front of him. Bang! There was an earth-shattering sound as his red shield was split into 2. Meanwhile, he was directly sent flying back thousands of miles. Moreover, Bai Zijing was injured and couldn't unleash the full power of the 9 Revolutions Heavenly Origin Sword. Otherwise, that sword would definitely have seriously injured the other party. How could this be? Why was he so strong? Tan Yifei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that a seriously injured person could unleash such a terrifying sword chi. He couldn't tolerate it. He roared angrily and prepared to attack. However, at that moment, Lin Xian attacked. The other party actually underestimated him, so he decided to teach the other party a lesson. Buzz! A dragon-shaped sword shadow condensed in front of him, and was then held in Lin Xian's hand. With a slash of the sword, the shadow of an azure dragon appeared, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, once again filling the entire sky. Clang! Feeling the power of that sword, Tan Yifei's scalp went numb. That sword chi was even more terrifying than the one that Bai Zijing had unleashed previously because Lin Xian wasn't seriously injured. Although he had exhausted a lot of his spiritual power, the power of the dragon-shaped sword shadow was not something that ordinary people could imagine. Feeling the threat of death, Tan Yifei's expression became abnormally ugly. He roared angrily and the Dian sword formation flashed out quickly. Countless light swords condensed in front of him, forming a complicated formation. They quickly combined and carried out a powerful defense. In the sky, a white giant figure appeared. It was completely condensed from sword chi. It enveloped Tan Yifei. In the next moment, the dragon-shaped sword shadow slashed the white giant and split it into 2. It even ruthlessly sent Tan Yifei flying again. Pfft! This time, Tan Yifei even spat out a mouthful of blood and became extremely disheveled. "Damn it, kid, how dare you hurt me? I'm going to kill you!" He was really furious. He couldn't tolerate being sent flying twice by 2 people in front of millions of martial artists. Therefore, the Dian sword formation quickly took shape beside him, covering the entire void. Chapter 2040. Seeing that a great battle was about to break out, the surrounding million cultivators cried out in surprise. They hadn't expected such a situation. Lin Xian's victory and becoming the number 1 swordsman had already shocked them. But now, another genius from the sacred land of Day had appeared and arrogantly challenged Lin Xian. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Lin Xian snorted coldly. With a wave of his sleeve, the dragon's word domain appeared again. An enormous spirit energy vortex formed above his head, madly devouring the spirit energy within 100,000 miles to replenish his exhausted strength. Buzz! Just as the 2 peerless geniuses were about to erupt, a fiery light appeared in the sky and instantly pierced through the 9 heavens. Then, it formed a giant that pushed open its hands, blocking Lin Xian and Tan Yifei. "Stop, this battle ends here." A figure appeared in the sky, accompanied by a sharp voice that spread for thousands of miles. Everyone looked up, not expecting another peerless expert to appear. In the next moment, they were shocked. The newcomer was a 16 or 17-year-old youth. His lips were red, his teeth were white, and his features were delicate, like an immortal child. However, the aura emanating from his body made everyone tremble. Not only that, the older generation figures and those sent by the various princes also frowned. General Li Hua. This youth was Valurium Palace's General Li Hua. He had finally made his move. Kid, you're not bad. I didn't expect you to be able to defeat Bai Zijing. As soon as General Li Hua appeared, he was the first to look at Lin Xian, then revealed a kind smile. Then, he looked at Bai Zijing again. Remember your words. Seal your sword for 100 years. I hope you don't go back on your words. Finally, he looked at Tan Yifei. People from the sacred land of Dai, this battle ends here. If you want to fight, do it next time. You don't want to fight someone who's exhausted too much energy, do you? Even if you win, it'll be an unfair victory. Do you want to be laughed at by the world? Humph. Hearing this, Tan Yifei snorted coldly, but he still looked coldly at Lin Xian. Kid, what's your name? Lin Xian. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you anytime. Lin Xian, right? I'll remember you. The next time we meet, I will kill you with my own hands. Tan Yifei snorted coldly. He then turned around and soared into the sky. The surrounding martial artists were shocked. They did not expect that this battle would not happen in the end. However, what shocked them even more was that Lin Xian was actually a member of Valurium Palace. It seemed like the Crown Prince competition was about to change again. General Li Hua stepped forward and stood beside Lin Xian. Then, he opened a red scroll. Then, the scroll broke, forming runes that filled the sky. They quickly formed an array and sent Lin Xian and General Li Hua away. The news of the sword meet on Mount Hua quickly spread throughout the Tai dynasty. The entire dynasty was in an uproar. They did not expect that Bai Zijing would be defeated in the end, and a youth called Lin Xian actually obtained the title of #1 swordsman. It was also the first time that Lin Xian's name was remembered by the Tai dynasty. For a moment, everyone was discussing and guessing the identity and background of this Lin Xian. Valurium Palace. King Valurium laughed heartily. He looked at Lin Xian and nodded in satisfaction. Lin Gongzi, I did not expect you to be able to defeat Bai Zijing. Your Highness is too polite. It was just a fluke. Lin Xian smiled. King Valurium said that it was not a fluke. Bai Zijing was very strong. In terms of sword skills, almost no one in the younger generation could surpass him. I did not expect that you would succeed. I will not go back on my promise. From tomorrow onwards, you can enter the second mountain. Thank you, Your Highness. Lin Xian also smiled. The second mountain was the mountain of ice. If he could enter, perhaps his sea god's ice would be even stronger. In the first mountain of fire, Lin Xian had not only absorbed the hellfire, but also cultivated 2 killer moves. The first was the Hellfire Lotus, and the second was the Fire God's Roar. What kind of killer moves would he be able to cultivate in the Mountain of Ice this time? Lin Xian was looking forward to it. Soon, he bid farewell to King Valurium and returned to his residence. He was ready to enter the Mountain of Ice the next day. After Lin Xian left, a young man in purple appeared in the hall. He was King Valurium's son. He said with a face full of shock. Father, he really did it. How did this kid do it? I don't know, but I know that we have found a treasure. Inform the 8th prince and have him come. I want to introduce this Lin Xian to the 8th prince. Yes, I understand. I will contact Brother 8 right away. The young man in purple no longer had his previous disdain. To be honest, Lin Xian's strength was beyond his expectations. He was shocked. The next day, the sun rose. Lin Xian departed from the valley and flew towards the mountain of ice. Soon, he entered the second mountain of ice. As soon as he stepped in, the wind and snow that filled the sky blew onto his body. It was as if it wanted to freeze him into an ice statue. Lin Xian snorted and used Sea God's ice to resist it. As expected of a mountain that was related to the Hellhound. The ice on this mountain was too terrifying. It could definitely evolve Lin Xian's Sea God's ice. After finding a place, Lin Xian sat down cross-legged and formed a seal with his fingers. He entered a state of cultivation. Time slowly passed. 10 days, 1 month, 1.5 months. On this day, two figures came to the Valurium Manor. One of them was a young man. His figure was tall and straight, and his face was handsome. He exuded a heroic aura. He wore green robes with golden dragons embroidered on his sleeves. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. It was obvious that he was no ordinary person. Next to him was a middle-aged man in white robes. The man had a fair face and no beard. An ice sword hung from his waist, and his aura was fierce. Especially his gaze, it was like a peerless divine sword. No one dared to look directly at him. Taoist Long, do you think the person Valurium King wants me to meet this time is Lin Xian? The man in green asked with a smile. The middle-aged man with a fair face and no beard said, That's for sure. Valurium King has already submitted to you, the 8th Prince. Moreover, it was General Li Hua who took Lin Xian away at the end of the Battle of Mount Hua. Come to think of it, Lin Xian must be Valurium King's man. This time, he must be recommending him to you, the 8th Prince. Hearing this, the man in green smiled proudly. He was obviously very satisfied. Valurium King is really lucky to have found such a powerful young genius. Even Bai Zijing was defeated. Moreover, he made Bai Zijing seal his sword for 100 years. It seems that he won't be able to help the first prince in this battle for the position of crown prince. This time, he'll cut off one of Boss Wangzi's arms. I'm afraid that our chances of winning will be much higher. That's only natural. Taoist Long also smiled. Speaking of luck, the prince is still the luckiest. No matter how many geniuses Valurium King has, they'll all be yours in the end. The two men chatted in low voices as they quickly set off for the depths of the Valurium Manor. Chapter 2041. The two whispered to each other as they headed towards the depths of the Valurium Palace. Soon, King Valurium sensed two powerful auras. His lips curled into a smile. He knew that the 8th Prince was here. With a flicker of his body, he tore through the void and appeared outside. 8th Prince, please come in. King Valurium smiled. The man in green smiled. Royal Uncle, you are too polite. I am a junior after all. You don't have to be so polite. Oh right, I wonder why Uncle Wang is looking for me this time. Could it be that he wanted to introduce me to that young man called Lin Xian? That's right. King Valurium smiled. The 8th Prince must have heard about the sword meet of Mount Hua. This Lin Xian must be very powerful. If he can work for the 8th Prince, he will definitely increase the 8th Prince's chances of winning. Royal Uncle, you are too kind. If I succeed, I will not mistreat you. The 8th Prince smiled. Then, he looked at Taoist Long and asked, Royal Uncle, where is Lin Xian? I want to meet him. 8th Prince, please come with me. King Valurium nodded and led the way. The three of them flew towards the Hell Mountain peak like lightning. Royal Uncle, I have to say that you are really amazing. You must have spent a lot of effort to get this three-headed Hellhound's mountain from an ancient ruin, right? This is a legendary demonic beast on the sky ranking. You managed to get your hands on its corpse. Looks like. Your luck is really heaven-defying. 8th Prince, you must be joking. There are all kinds of cultivation treasures in the palace. My 3 mountains are really not worth mentioning, King Valurium said. Then, he looked at the mountain peak in front of him and said loudly, Lin Gongzi, are you satisfied with your cultivation? His voice turned into a ray of light and entered the ice mountain. But after waiting for a while, there was no movement. The 8th Prince was fine, but Taoist Long, who was beside him, frowned. In the next moment, he snorted coldly. There was a strange energy in his voice. It was like a clap of thunder that exploded rapidly. The terrifying sound wave spread to the ice mountain ahead. Boom, boom, boom. The void fluctuated as if it was about to explode. The frost on the ice mountain peak also began to tremble violently. Snow and ice flew everywhere. It looked like an avalanche was about to happen. However, at that moment, an enormous burst of ice energy was drawn out. Then, the wind and snow that filled the sky turned into two enormous ice palms that held up all of the mountain peaks. The howling cold wind that filled the sky instantly quieted down. As for that thunderous sound wave, it was instantly sealed in ice. What a powerful method! What a terrifying power of ice! When the eighth prince saw this scene, his brows furrowed. As for Taoist Long, a trace of surprise appeared on his face. When Taoist Long saw that the other party had actually dared to make the eighth prince wait, he was extremely displeased. Therefore, he was prepared to take the other party down a notch. However, he didn't expect that the other party's methods would far exceed his expectations. As expected of the person who could defeat Bai Zijing. He was really powerful. Off to the side, King Valurium smiled but said nothing. The eighth prince's eyes flickered. Now, he was looking forward to the person inside. Inside the ice mountain, Lin Xian slowly opened his eyes. Lin Xian opened his eyes and frowned slightly. As soon as he circulated his soul power, Lin Xian sensed three powerful auras outside. One of them belonged to King Valurium. As for the other two, their identities must be extraordinary as well. He sighed and slowly stood up. He knew that he couldn't continue cultivating. However, the results of this 1.5 months were great. He had mastered two more killer moves. One was the offensive Frost Break, and the other was a defensive ability, Ice Guard. The power of Sea God's ice had also increased. In the next moment, Lin Xian tore open the void and left the ice mountain peak. Whoosh! Soon, he appeared in front of King Valurium and the other two. He found that there were two other people besides King Valurium. One was a young man in a green robe, and the other was a middle-aged man with a pale face and no beard. Both of their auras were very powerful. However, it seemed that the young man's identity was more honorable. Both the middle-aged man and King Valurium were standing behind the young man. Needless to say, the young man should be a prince. After all, only a prince could make King Valurium cautious. At this moment, King Valurium spoke with a smile. Lin Gongzi, this is the eighth prince of the Tai dynasty. The eighth prince. Lin Xian frowned when he heard that. He had learned a little about the situation during the battle at Huashan. There were three most powerful princes in the Tai dynasty. Among them, the first prince, the third prince, and the eighth prince. Bai Zijing, who he defeated, was one of the first prince's men. He didn't expect King Valurium to support the eighth prince. In the next moment, he cupped his fist slightly. Greetings, eighth prince. Lin Gongzi is too courteous. I have heard about the Battle of Mount Hua. Lin Gongzi is indeed a young genius and a peerless swordsman. You defeated Bai Zijing. If you work for me, my chances of winning the Battle of Crown Prince will be much higher. Battle of Crown Prince? Hearing this, Lin Xian showed a trace of surprise. He didn't know about this. He had just come to the Tai dynasty not long ago. His original purpose was to come to the nest of 10,000 dragons. He thought that he could only know about the nest of 10,000 dragons by getting close to the core of the dynasty. Therefore, he came to the Valurium Palace. But he didn't expect that King Valurium would introduce him to the eighth prince and ask him to participate in the Battle of Crown Prince. To be honest, he wasn't interested in the Battle of Crown Prince. After all, it had nothing to do with him who became the Crown Prince. However, King Valurium's next words changed his mind. Because King Valurium said, Lin Gongzi, I guess you don't know about the Battle of Crown Prince. It's very simple. Let me explain it to you. The Battle of Crown Prince was a competition between all the princes of the Tai dynasty. It was an open competition. Every prince could invite all the major factions and outstanding experts to help them. For example, if the eighth prince became the crown prince, everyone who supported him would be baptized by the dragon vein. That was the dragon vein of the Tai dynasty. Being baptized by the dragon vein was absolutely beneficial to the cultivators. Dragon vein baptism. Hearing this, Lin Xian was surprised. He was no stranger to the dragon vein baptism. When he was in the Heavenly South region, he had participated in the Azure Dragon Society. He was the champion at that time and had been baptized by the dragon vein baptism. But the heavenly south region's dragon vein baptism couldn't be compared to the Tai dynasty's dragon vein baptism. One could imagine how great the benefits of being baptized by the Tai dynasty's dragon vein baptism would be. Thinking of this, he also understood. No wonder so many experts were willing to participate in the battle of Crown Prince. It turned out that there were such benefits. He had another idea. If he followed the 8th prince, he would get more information about the nest of 10,000 dragons than if he followed King Valurium. Chapter 2042. Therefore, he nodded and said with a smile, "As long as the 8th prince doesn't mind, I will do my best to become the crown prince." Great! Hearing this, the 8th prince smiled satisfactorily. With the participation of Lin Xian, the 8th prince's team would become stronger and stronger. However, at this moment, Lin Xian said, "8th prince, I can't go back with you now." "Can't go back? What's going on?" The 8th prince was stunned. Lin Xian said, "I have an agreement with King Valurium. I have to complete 3 tasks for him and then enter the next 3 mountains. I have already completed 2 tasks. There is still 1 more mountain that I have yet to enter. I will go after I complete the last task." Hearing this, the 8th prince was stunned for a moment before he understood. This should be King Valurium's idea. King Valurium smiled and said, "Lin Gongzi, since you have joined the 8th prince's team, you don't have to do the 3rd task anymore. You can enter the Lightning Mountain directly." "Really? Thank you, Your Highness." Lin Xian was happy. He knew that King Valurium was giving face to the 8th prince. However, he didn't care about it. He didn't care about the relationship between the kings and the princes. All he wanted was strength. At the next moment, Lin Xian said, "8th prince, when I come out from the Lightning Mountain, I will go and find you. I will wait for you." The 8th prince nodded satisfactorily. King Valurium said with a smile, "Since you have met him, why don't you come to my place and have some spiritual tea? I have recently obtained some good spiritual tea." "Uncle King, you are too polite. I remember that your Hongling's spiritual tea is the best," the 8th prince said with a smile. Then, he, Taoist Long, and King Valurium left the place. Lin Xian turned around and entered the Lightning Mountain. Above the Lightning Mountain, the last mountain, Lin Xian also had the lightning attribute. However, the gap between it and the sea god's ice and hellfire was getting bigger and bigger. Therefore, he rarely used the power of lightning. But now, the power of lightning within the thunder just happened to make up for this. Therefore, he started to cultivate in seclusion. On the other side, in the palace. On the other hand, the first prince's expression was unusually gloomy and even somewhat sinister. Because he had lost a general, Bai Zijing. That was his most capable swordsman, who was extremely powerful. Originally, he had planned to rely on the White Sun realm to sweep across the world and obtain a huge advantage. However, he did not expect that he would be defeated at the sword sparring competition on Mount Hua. He was even forced to seal his sword for 100 years. If that was the case, he would not be able to help him at all. And his strength would be greatly reduced. Damn it! Damn it! Who can tell me what's going on with that Lin Xian? He had already found out about the sword meet on Mount Hua. He naturally knew that the person who had defeated Bai Zijing was a young man called Lin Xian. However, he had never heard of this person before, which was why he lost so unexpectedly. We also didn't expect Bai Zijing to lose. Yes, it was indeed surprising. The warriors under his command said. However, although Lin Xian's background was unknown, he was definitely related to King Valurium. Otherwise, General Li Hua wouldn't have intervened and taken him away in the end. He must have intervened to protect the kid. Valurium Palace? Hearing this, the first prince narrowed his eyes. This King Valurium usually keeps a very low profile. I once invited him, but he politely refused. Now I don't even know which prince he's standing behind. No matter which prince he's standing behind, as long as the first prince wants him, he'll be yours. Even if you can't get him, you should get rid of him as soon as possible. Otherwise, if a certain prince really gets him, then he'll be a huge threat. After all, someone who could defeat Bai Zijing was absolutely terrifying. Yes, that's right. Thinking of this, the first prince slammed the table, a sharp glint appearing in his eyes. Sky River Great Master, King of Many Treasures, bring me to Valurium Palace. You must make King Valurium join our side and make him hand over that Lin Xian. If he can't be used by me, then just kill him. There's no need to keep him alive. Yes. Don't worry, First Prince. The two men laughed. The Sky River Great Master was an old man in white robes, and King of Many Treasures was a middle-aged man with a long beard. After receiving their orders, they turned and left the great hall. On the other side, the third prince was somewhat happy. This was because the first prince's loss was undoubtedly good news for him. At the same time, he was also curious about Lin Xian's identity. So he was on King Valurium's side. The third prince narrowed his eyes. On the side, a middle-aged man holding a feather fan laughed. Your Highness, should we send someone to Valurium Palace? This King Valurium seems to keep a low profile, but he's actually quite ambitious. I'm guessing that he's already joined one of the princes. However, he's not on our side. Your Highness is wise. Actually, I'm thinking the same thing. I feel that we should rope in that Tan Yifei. Since he has a grudge against Lin Xian, we should use him to our advantage. Moreover, Tan Yifei isn't any weaker than Lin Xian or Bai Zijing. Very well, Mr. Yu, I'll have to trouble you then. I'll leave this matter to you. You must rope in Tan Yifei under my command. The third prince smiled. He was very satisfied and trusted this Mr. Yu. Valurium Palace. King Valurium and the eighth prince had left to discuss the details of the battle for the position of crown prince. Lin Xian was still in closed-door cultivation. He hadn't come out, and was absorbing the power of thunder with all his might. However, two figures had arrived at Valurium Palace. One was an old man in white robes, and the other was a middle-aged man with a long beard. The Sky River Great Master and the King of Many Treasures had been sent by the first prince. Both of them were great experts and powerful. Their auras were currently swirling around them. They stood high up in the sky and scanned the area below with their souls. Immediately, their powerful soul power enveloped an area of 10,000 miles. Everything below was captured by the two men. King Valurium wasn't here? The Sky River Great Master was a bit surprised. He really hadn't sensed King Valurium's aura. The King of Many Treasures sneered at the side. If the King Valurium Palace wasn't here, then there was nothing to talk about. Let's go down and capture that Lin brat. Alright, let's do that. The Sky River Great Master also revealed a sinister smile. Both of them were vicious and merciless. As great experts, they didn't put Lin Xian in their eyes at all. Lin Xian might be able to contend against one of them, but if the two of them attacked together, he wouldn't have a chance to escape. Where was that brat? After looking around, the Sky River Great Master frowned again. He hadn't sensed Lin Xian's aura either. According to the information he received from the Sword of Mount Hua, Lin Xian was a swordsman with a very fierce aura. It was easy to identify him. However, the Sky River Great Master couldn't find him. Let me do it. The King of Many Treasures waved his hand and took out a silver mirror. Chapter 2043. The Origin Soul Mirror. It was a powerful Earth-rank treasure that could track anyone's movements. It should be able to find that Lin brat. In the next moment, King of Many Treasures activated the Origin Soul Mirror in his hand. A mysterious aura emerged and enveloped Valurium Manor below. 30 minutes later, King of Many Treasures smiled sinisterly. He'd found his target. Found him? The Sky River Great Ancestor asked when he saw King of Many Treasures smile. King of Many Treasures nodded. Yes, I've found him. Come with me. In the next moment, the two tore through the air and disappeared in a flash of light. They used powerful abilities to conceal their presence so that no one in the manor would know that they'd entered. In order to conceal their presence, King of Many Treasures took out a large purple umbrella that floated above their heads. The purple umbrella was engraved with mysterious Tao runes. Tens of thousands of runes hung down from it, enveloping the two. All auras were concealed. Even if there were experts in Valyria Manor, they wouldn't be able to sense them. After flying for a while, they finally arrived in front of Helm Mountain. The Sky River Great Ancestor and King of Many Treasures narrowed their eyes when they saw the three strange peaks that towered into the clouds. What a strange mountain! What terrifying power! The two were shocked. They hadn't expected Valyria Manor to have such a treasure. Why do I feel like this aura belongs to a peerless monster king? Whatever, be careful. There's more to this mountain than meets the eye. That brat's aura is in one of the lightning peaks. Should we attack? The Sky River Great Ancestor asked. Yes. Let's do it here. We'll go all out. I'm sure we'll be able to take him down quickly. However, let me set up a formation around him first. King of Many Treasures was called that because he had many treasures. Therefore, it didn't take long for him to take out another heaven-sealing formation, which completely sealed off the three peaks of hell and isolated their auras. After doing all this, the two looked at each other and grinned sinisterly. Hum hum! The two turned into flickering shadows and tore through the air, flying towards the lightning peaks. They appeared inside the lightning peaks in the blink of an eye. Their king domains suddenly expanded and enveloped the surroundings. Humph! Lin Xian opened his eyes when he sensed this. A cold glint appeared in his eyes. He wasn't surprised by what had happened. Although he was cultivating in seclusion, he still had the Crimson Dragon by his side. With the strength of the Crimson Dragon, he had long since discovered the other party, so Lin Xian was prepared. Who are you people? How dare they make a move in Valyria Manor? Lin Xian slowly stood up and asked coldly. In the void, the Tianhe Great Ancestor and the King of Many Treasures were also stunned. They did not expect the other party to be so calm. Could it be that he didn't know his own situation? Kid, it doesn't matter who we are. What's important is that you come back with us obediently. What if I don't? Lin Xian sneers. Then don't blame us for being rude. Attack! The two of them coldly shouted. Then, their king's domains roiled, exploding out with extremely terrifying energy. Space twisted as two massive energies tore through the void. They were like sharp heavenly swords as they viciously slashed towards Lin Xian. Whoosh! 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 Lin Xian used the heavenly dragon's 8 steps. The shadow of a dragon appeared beneath his feet. He took a step forward and instantly dodged the spatial cracks that filled the sky. He came to the side, his brows furrowed. Two great experts, and elite experts at that. It seemed that the other party had come prepared. They must have figured out his strength before making a move. His current combat strength had probably been known during the sword duel on Mount Hua. Therefore, sending only one elite expert would not be enough to take him down. Only 2 elite almighties could pose a threat to him. You're quite fast, but do you think you can completely dodge them? The Tianhe Great Ancestor sneered from above. They had a general understanding of Lin Xian. They knew that he was fast and strong with the sword. However, the other party knew nothing about them. Therefore, this was their advantage. For 2 elite almighties to take down a young brat, it would be a piece of cake. It seems that you know me very well. But do you really think you know me? Lin Xian sneered. You want to take me down with just the 2 of you? What a fool's dream. Rosalong, go ahead. F***CK. Ben Wan had not exercised for a long time. He could play with the other party. The Crimson Dragon sneered and also attacked quickly. It charged toward the King of Many Treasures. How dare a snake come over? You're courting death. Kid, don't tell me you think you can contend against me? Seeing the Crimson Dragon flying over, the King of Many Treasures sneered disdainfully. Boom! He struck out with his palm, forming a vast and unparalleled power that enveloped the area below. Bang! However, in the next moment, he was stunned. Because the Crimson Dragon had directly sent his vast energy flying with a swing of its tail. Not only that, The other party even used dragon claws that filled the sky to grab at him. That swift and fierce aura made his hair stand on end. Damn it, what was that? How could it have such a powerful attack power? The king of many treasures was stunned. He did not expect the other party to be so powerful. It far exceeded his expectations. Therefore, in the next moment, he and the Crimson Dragon fought. On the other side, Lin Xian had his eyes on the great ancestor of Sky River. What did you say just now? You want to take me away? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. As he spoke, he shouted, clenched his hand into a fist, and quickly punched out. The violent power that filled the sky turned into a black dragon and rushed towards the great ancestor of Sky River. Instantly, the void where he was shattered. The great ancestor of Sky River's expression changed. He quickly retreated and barely dodged the punch. Then, his expression became extremely gloomy. That was because he realized that their advantage was gone. Originally, they wanted to fight 2 against 1 so that they could quickly take down the other party. But now, it seemed that it was impossible. The king of many treasures was actually restrained by a red snake, so he could only face Lin Xian alone. This would greatly increase the difficulty of his success. But even so, he still had to make a move. He did not believe that a brat could overturn the sky and defeat him. Therefore, in the next moment, he quickly made a move. A blue heavenly river appeared beside him, emitting a rumbling sound. Then, along with his palm, it quickly rushed forward like a divine rainbow that streaked across the void. This attack was too fierce. Everywhere it passed, everything was shattered. The Milky Way that filled the sky enveloped Lin Xian, wanting to kill him. However, Lin Xian snorted coldly and formed a seal with his palm. Ice Guardian. Boom! 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 Suddenly, a cold aura quickly appeared on his body, forming a huge ice queen that enveloped him. The ice queen was 1,000 feet tall. Her body was hazy, and there were 2 blue wings on her back. At this moment, she quickly closed the dragon and protected Lin Xian. Chapter 2044. The Ice Queen was 1,000 feet tall. Her body was hazy, and there were 2 blue wings on her back. At this moment, she quickly closed the dragon and protected Lin Xian. Boom! 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 The terrifying Milky Way collided fiercely with the Ice Queen. However, it didn't break. On the contrary, after the collision, countless frosts formed on the Milky Way and quickly froze. Not only that, but the entire space was also filled with endless cold air. The Sky River Great Ancestor felt that the spiritual power and speed in his body were suppressed and became slower than before. Boom! 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 Just as he was shocked that the other party had such a terrifying ice aura, the wind and clouds above his head changed, forming a huge vortex. Moreover, there was the sound of thunder. Streaks of terrifying lightning energy appeared above him. This was originally the Thunder Mountain, and at this moment, it was surrounded by violent lightning. However, the Sky River Great Ancestor was more powerful. He used his king's domain to block all the lightning outside. Thus, he didn't receive the impact of the lightning. But now, the change above his head made his expression change drastically. He found that his king's domain couldn't block the lightning above him. Terrifying thunderclouds gathered rapidly, and the black mass made him feel suffocated. 5-colored lightning flashed in the clouds. On the other hand, Lin Xian's lips curled into a cold smile. Have a taste of my new killer move, 5 thunders. As his voice fell, in the sky in front of him, a bolt of lightning fell. It was 5-colored lightning, and it carried a violent power that filled the sky. Like a wild dragon, it directly struck the Sky River Great Ancestor. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the 5-colored lightning exploded, and a huge rumble sounded. Everything in front of him was completely drowned by the sea of lightning. The huge lightning pierced through the void. This scene made even the king of many treasures, who was fighting in the distance, change his expression drastically. He didn't expect that the other party would be so difficult to deal with. It was far beyond his expectations. Sure enough, when the lightning in front of him disappeared, the Sky River Great Ancestor's figure appeared. However, he was in a sorry state. His body was charred black. It was obvious that he had been struck by lightning. Even black smoke was coming out of his mouth. Ah! Damn brat! I'm going to kill you! The Sky River Great Ancestor roared crazily. It seemed that he was really angry. Boom! Boom! He waved his hands, and the Milky Way around him surged, emitting a mighty power. A terrifying blue light shot into the sky. The Milky Way quickly covered the Tianhe Great Ancestor's body. Then, as his hands moved, two huge blue palms were formed and blasted out. He once again charged towards Lin Xian. Wang! Lin Xian's body was enveloped in the ice barrier. Then, he pulled out the nine-hell demon sword and rushed over. With a wave of his sword, a terrifying black sword light tore through the void. It was like the netherworld as it directly appeared in front of the Tianhe Great Ancestor. Pun! The Sky River Great Ancestor slapped the nine underworld demon's sword with both hands, creating a loud sound. The two of them quickly engaged in an intense battle, causing the heavens to collapse and the earth to split. The Milky Way shone brilliantly. At this moment, the Sky River Great Ancestor roared. Immediately, the Sky River on his body changed. Stars appeared in the surging Milky Way, dazzling and emitting a mysterious aura. Pung pung pung. Some of the stars rotated and collided violently with Lin Xian's Ice Guardian. Then, Lin Xian was pushed back. Kid, do you think that's all I have? I'll let you know the consequences of provoking me. The Tianhe Great Ancestor sneered. His white hair danced in the wind, and two sharp rays of light shot out from his eyes. At this moment, the Tianhe Great Ancestor was like a demon king. He had the power to shatter the heavens and split the earth. He raised his hands high, and the stars in the sky gathered to form a huge vortex. Milky Way slash! He raised the Milky Way with one hand and slashed it forward as if it had turned into a blade light. This attack was like a rainbow. It was really like a sky full of stars. With a powerful pressure, it completely enveloped Lin Xian. Lin Xian also snorted coldly. His body emitted black flames that instantly covered the area. At this moment, he was like a god of war. His aura was like a rainbow, and he was unstoppable. Fire God roar! Lin Xian once again used a powerful killing move. Immediately, the Ice Guardian on his body disappeared and was replaced by a flame giant. Roar! With a furious roar, heaven and earth shook, and the mountains and rivers shattered. The powerful sound waves mixed with the terrifying flames formed a violent and boundless black wave that rushed forward. In the next moment, the two collided. The two collided fiercely in the sky. The Milky Way shook, and the light flickered. The terrifying flame energy surged and shattered the void. Clang! Another earth-shattering attack. Then, the Milky Way in the sky shattered into pieces under the fire god's roar. He actually broke my Milky Way slash? The Tianhe Great Ancestor's pupils constricted. He didn't expect the other party's flames to be so powerful that they could even burn his Milky Way slash. It really surprised him. However, what made his scalp tingle was still to come. Because opposite him, Lin Xian made another move. He raised the nine darkness demonic sword high, and the flame giant on his body did the same. Whoosh! Not only that, but a flame sword that was hundreds of feet long appeared in the sky. The flames danced and burned the void. It also emitted a terrifying murderous aura. Whoosh! The sword slashed down, splitting the void into two halves. The terrifying flame sword completely enveloped the Tianhe Great Ancestor. It was too shocking. Even in the sky, there was a loud dragon's roar. Because not only did this flame sword fuse with the hellfire, but it also had the power of the great dragon sword soul. It could be said that it made people despair. Even the king of many treasures, who was fighting with the Crimson Dragon, felt his scalp tingle. He also felt the threat of death. In the next moment, he decisively retreated thousands of miles and looked ahead in shock. The void in front of him collapsed, and the Tianhe great ancestors' king's domain was split open by the sword. The power of thunder and lightning surged out, and the Tianhe great ancestors' clothes were torn. There was a huge sword scar on his body. The sword scar was very terrifying. It even split open his inner armor, revealing deep white bones. Run! When the king of many treasures saw this scene, his scalp tingled. He turned into a stream of light, and quickly arrived beside the Tianhe great ancestor. Then, he soared into the sky, not daring to stay here at all. Want to leave? Not so easy! The crimson dragon god sneered and flicked its dragon claws, covering the sky and the earth, covering thousands of miles. The terrifying dragon claws carried the dragon's might and shattered the void. The terrifying power enveloped the two people. The king of many treasures' expression changed. He raised his hand and summoned a large green bell. It grew larger and larger, like a green mountain, and resisted the dragon claws in the sky. At the same time, he quickly fled into the distance. Hum! In the blink of an eye, he was out of the mountain of lightning. Then, he broke the formation and fled outside Valurium Manor. Want to leave? Let's see if Ben Huang agrees. The dark red divine dragon also caught up to them. Lin Xian took a step forward, and his speed was extremely fast as he chased after them. Chapter 2045. Valurium Manor hadn't noticed the previous battle because of the formation's defenses. But now that the formation had been removed, the aura here immediately attracted Valurium Manor's attention. All of a sudden, a cold aura appeared, and powerful figures quickly descended. What followed was a series of thunderous voices. Who dares to behave atrociously in the manor? Crack, crack. Lord of many treasures felt his scalp go numb when he saw Valurium Manor's experts. Honored Master Tianhe's face was even paler. He had already swallowed a lot of heavenly treasures, so his injuries had been stopped. But the sword aura on his wounds couldn't be erased in a short time. He knew that he'd lost this time. He'd underestimated his opponent. His opponent was too strong, and the sword aura was too strange. It seemed to be indestructible. Lord of many treasures sighed. He couldn't take the current situation head-on. So, he took out a spatial jade slip. This was a very precious teleportation jade slip. There was a teleportation formation sealed inside, which could teleport people out. He was currently using such a jade slip. Boom! The red jade slip burned, and runes that filled the sky gathered under their feet, forming a spatial array platform. The two of them quickly disappeared. After the formation disappeared, several powerful figures suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Then, a huge palm slammed into the spatial vortex. Bang! The palm struck down with earth-shattering force, but it was still a step too late. Lord of many treasures and honored Master Tianhe had already been teleported away. What's going on? What happened? General Li Hua had also arrived. He looked at Lin Xian and asked in a low voice. I don't know. They're probably here to assassinate me. I was cultivating on Lightning Mountain when they suddenly attacked. But one of them was heavily injured by me, so they ran away. Heavily injured by you? Hearing this, the experts' eyelids twitched wildly. Although they hadn't seen the newcomers clearly, they could tell that they were elites from their auras alone. Such a person had actually been severely wounded by a 6-star king. This was simply too inconceivable. They knew that Lin Xian was strong enough to defeat Bai Zijing, but no matter how strong he wouldn't be able to contend against two elite experts. However, Lin Xian did it, which really surprised them greatly. They knew that the young man before them definitely had a secret that they were unaware of. Of course, they had no way of probing into such secrets. Alright, it's good that you're fine. Be more careful. Now that His Highness is not in the mansion, you should be careful. I got it. Lin Xian nodded and said, I'll take advantage of the fact that they just failed to assassinate me and leave immediately. I'll head to the Imperial City and meet up with the 8th Prince. All right, then be careful. General Li Huan nodded and instructed. Indeed, now was the best time to leave, because the news had not spread yet. Otherwise, it would have been a while later. After those people received the news and learned of Lin Xian's strength, they would send even stronger assassins. After bidding farewell to General Li Huan, Lin Xian descended from the sky and flew towards the imperial city of the Tai Empire. On the other side, Lord of Many Treasures and Master Tianhe had also fled from Valurium Manor. Then, the two of them appeared in a barren mountain. Damn it! How could that kid be so strong? Master Tianhe gritted his teeth, his expression extremely ugly. On the other side, Lord of Many Treasures' expression was grave. He hurriedly sent news to the first prince that the situation had changed. The imperial palace. The first prince's expression darkened when he received the news. He hadn't expected that the two elites he'd sent out would fail to capture the young man. This was truly unexpected. Moreover, after this incident, he and Lin Xian had probably formed a grudge. Therefore, it was impossible to recruit the young man. Therefore, he made up his mind to eliminate Lin Xian immediately. He couldn't allow the other princes to use him. If two elite almighties couldn't kill you, then four almighties would do. I don't believe that you can defy the heavens. The first prince sneered. He had no shortage of great experts. Therefore, he immediately sent four of them to Valurium Manor to kill the enemy. However, he was destined to fail because Lin Xian had long since left Valurium Manor. On the other side, the third prince was very happy because he'd successfully recruited Tanifei, the genius of the Dian's sacred land, to his side. Now, he was even stronger than before. He was confident that he would emerge victorious in the battle for the position of crown prince. He would suppress the first prince and the eighth prince. The position of crown prince will be mine. The third prince revealed a proud smile. Time slowly passed. On this day, Lin Xian's figure appeared above a formation in the capital. He'd used Valurium Manor's transportation formation to arrive at the capital. The capital city was vast and majestic. Moreover, Lin Xian could sense the dense spirit energy within the capital as soon as he appeared. He could even feel the surging dragon aura beneath the ground. It was as if a peerless beast was entrenched beneath the earth. Not long after, Lin Xian used the contact method given to him by General Li Huan to contact the eighth prince. Space rippled in the sky as four burly men appeared. Their upper bodies were bare, and their muscles bulged like horned dragons. Each of them was incomparably powerful. However, these four were merely sedan bearers. They carried a red palanquin and slowly descended. Are you Lin Xian or Lin Gongzi? One of the men looked at Lin Xian and asked in a low voice. Lin Xian nodded. No, I am. The eighth prince has sent us to receive Lin Gongzi. They opened the palanquin as they spoke. All right. Lin Xian nodded and sat on the palanquin. The four men lifted the palanquin and soared into the air, turning into a streak of light and disappearing into the void. In an imperial garden. The eighth prince sat in a pavilion, enjoying tea and admiring flowers. At this time, a red light flashed in the sky. An enormous red palanquin carried by four burly men quickly descended. The eighth prince narrowed his eyes when he saw this. The guards beside him also quickly walked forward. Whoosh! As the palanquin landed, two palace maids respectfully lifted the curtains. Lin Xian then walked out from within. Ha, Lin Gongzi, we meet again. Seeing Lin Xian walk out, the eighth prince laughed heartily. Greetings, eighth prince. Lin Xian cupped his fists and smiled. Come, brother Lin, try my spiritual tea. This is an 8,000-year-old red-robed spiritual tea. Then there was the eighth prince. Lin Xian did not stand on ceremony. He walked into the pavilion and sat on the stone bench. Then, he picked up the cup of spiritual tea in front of him and slowly tasted it. It is indeed a good tea, Lin Xian praised. Indeed, this was an 8,000-year-old spiritual tea. It contained an extremely powerful spiritual energy. Drinking a mouthful was like drinking a mouthful of spiritual spring water, causing the aura in his body to boil rapidly, like boiling water. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.